Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
You were right. I'm a rebel. I am. I just channeled my rebellion into the podcast. So we're just looking at the poster and the tagline. And the tagline is very crummy. Makes it look like a very stupid movie. But the poster for this movie is so great. And it makes me miss painted posters.
Sure. I mean, to remind you, you know the poster,
Yes,
right?
of course. Iconic.
Yes.
But if someone did that today, it would be photoshopped, right?
100%. I also just don't think there's something like very elegantly simple about like he's just coming in from the other side.
He's upside down.
I feel like they just don't do that anymore. You know,
Yeah,
May I
just
say,
floating
and I know
heads.
you haven't introduced me yet, so people
Just
may
how
not
we
know.
like
Guests
it.
should talk on mic before we
Okay,
introduce them.
Great.
It's the opposite of your podcast.
It also is interesting because technically, in a movie like Drop Dead Fred or something like that, the crazy character would be the one coming in upside
Good
down.
call.
Right.
And yet she is there almost as the grounding, centering force, and his life has been turned upside down by it, which is interesting.
That's a perfect take. Thank you all for listening.
He's in that electric blue suit, too.
Yes. That is an interesting devolution, though, of like, this is painted, and then what, 5 or 6 years later, Drop Dead Fred is like clearly a posed photo, but you can tell that he is actually hanging upside down on the day.
Yeah.
The way they're looking at each other, it's clear that that was shot for real.
Yeah,
I don't think so. You think this is for real?
I think so. Do you disagree? Well,
I
now
think that's a photo.
Yeah, the way their hair
you know what? Now I
is sort of layered over each other.
As a person who has done an upside down episode of my show, it is very difficult to get people's hair to stand up the way that it normally would fall.
Sure.
When you're filming right side up, but then turning it upside down in post.
Good call.
And that to me looks like they basically slicked his hair up. The titular Drop Dead Fred, of course.
Right.
Of course.
That's kind of the classic Rick Mayall hair height.
Of
You
course.
know?
That's right. He had sort of bouffant, mushroomy, yes.
Yeah. I gotta say this, and it's this is not the right place to say it, but I just want to quickly.
Where do you want to say it?
I've talked.
On Capitol Hill?
I'd love to say it on Capitol Hill, and they will not
McLaughlin
let me
report.
in. I'd love to sit down with the group, the McLaughlin group, but
Or group, not report. What am I talking
I don't know.
about?
You're a moron.
It's more of a group of guys.
group.
They're not
It's like
reporting on anything.
They're still
just
going,
hanging.
right?
yeah, the McLaughlin Wolfpack.
Yeah.
We've talked in the past about how much Al Pacino and my grandmother now look the same.
Yeah.
How they have similar sort of levels of fake tan and hair height.
The hair height.
Right.
Just sort of like...
Pacino, does he have the mullet kind of thing going on too these days?
Yeah,
Yes.
a lot of length in the back.
And a lot of like layers.
Sweeping
It's a
it
lot
back.
of like
Right.
little pieces sticking
He almost
up.
has the Rachel going on, doesn't he?
He kind of has the Rachel going on, and he's got weird highlights like that too. Like his hair is like
Yeah.
a sort of sandy brown with blonde streaks in it.
The thing
Yeah.
that's funny is that De Niro has also favored the long hair
Yes.
now, but like he just sort of, he just grew it
Yeah,
back. Whereas
right.
Pacino, right, there's something going on.
Pacino does have the longer in the back than he does on the top.
He also-
Yes.
And this one has a real
Did I
like,
say De Niro or
Lucifer
Pacino?
beard.
He's
Lucifer
got a
Pacino.
yes.
Okay. I meant to
Yes.
I also feel like Pacino dresses like my grandmother now. And then I went to see The Irishman, which is the most Pacino has been in a character, like giving himself to a character.
Oh, really? Oh,
in a
good.
theatrical film in probably 15 years, where he's really
Hoo-ah.
like, yeah, right, where he's doing the classics. No, but where he like looks different, and he's doing a different voice, and he's not just relying on all the old mannerisms. And the entire time, I couldn't get my grandmother out of my head. Like he's
No,
Jimmy
I'm gonna think
Hoffa, he's
about
got
her.
the slick back hair. Yeah, wait until you see The Irishman. You're going to keep on thinking.
I thought
Ruta
in
Podemski.
the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he was kind of different.
Oh,
He's great in that.
I was forgetting that also
love that.
existed.
Schloss.
He's really good in it.
yeah.
Yeah. He's having fun again.
He is having fun. I also like that you then see him later like lumbering around in his home theater and,
Oh, yeah.
seems like he has a nice little life.
Yeah, he's got an interesting waddle in that
He's got a good waddle.
Because it's
Do you
an
mean
Irishman.
underneath his neck? Is
I
that
mean,
what we're talking
well-
about?
there's a little going on there.
That too, but I was also saying he's got a little bit of an Oswald Cobblepot gait
Sure.
in Once Upon a Time
Yeah.
in Hollywood.
He should be in Batman.
He should.
Come on.
He should play, dare I say it, the the Clown
The
Prince of
Batman.
Crime.
What if he were Batman?
What if he were
He's
Batman?
one of the best
Now?
Yes, he's
Yes.
one of the best actors of our generation. Why should he not play
And
Batman?
Matt Reeves, if you ask him, Al Pacino, the guy has an Oscar.
Yeah.
Did you see The Godfather? This
He's got
guy's
one
great.
Oscar.
And
Oscar.
when someone has honed their craft into a fine blade, has ascended to the top of the mountain of the art, the reward is
playing Batman.
you gotta play the Batman. I'm looking for clues.
Who me? Who are? Who me?
I'm the Batman.
He could just sort of like sculpt his hair up into ears, I guess, right?
You
He's
got
got the height.
You gotta cut out some holes in this mask. Gotta have the hair poking through.
Oh, I thought you meant eye holes.
I can't see.
I'm trying to figure out your scene. They didn't cut eye holes out in the mask, and so he goes to the costume designer saying, "You gotta cut holes in this
You
mask."
gotta cut holes.
I was like, "Okay, interesting premise." I
Can't breathe.
He's talking to Alfred.
He's talking Alfred.
Right.
Yeah.
He's
Talking to
talking Alfred,
He's-
and then do a swap. Make
Oh.
Alfred Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson's got that classy British touch.
Yeah.
Elegant.
He's a very normal,
angular,
elegant man.
Right.
Yes.
or make it Radcliffe or someone like that with
Yeah.
Pacino. This is a dynamite idea for a Batman movie.
I feel kind of bad that we're going to cost Warner Brothers so much in sunken development right now.
No,
Because
they're
they're
gonna
going to have to
to just put
they're
it
just
into
gonna hear
turnaround.
this.
They're
Right.
just going to hear this and
Yeah.
reset. Went, oh, old Al. Of course.
Of course.
It is so funny having recently rewatched Casino in preparation for The Irishman.
Sure.
And I saw.
Why do you need to watch Casino to prepare
I
for
want
the
to
Irishman?
reacclimate with the Scorsese mob patina.
Okay.
Also, you went to a casino recently enough.
I went to a
so maybe
casino. I
you
want to
were
prepare
Trying to get that juice back.
how to win money.
Right.
I watched the film Casino.
Right.
And only learned how to get murdered.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in a
by counting
cornfield.
cards.
Yes. But it's so funny that in Casino,
Casino.
De Niro's defining characteristic is that he's Jewish.
Right.
And then the Irishman, his defining characteristic is that
This
he's
guy's so Irish.
Yeah, and he's
Again, I wish I didn't know that, but thank you.
like, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to connect the dots on the title.
Well, that I really, yeah.
You thought it was just like an ironic nickname.
I will say that I prefer not knowing anything about any movie.
Sure.
And so I was talking to Adam Scott on our REM show the other day about the Irish, and he was saying how great it was. And I was like, yeah, but De Niro, Pacino, they're not Irish. And he goes, and then he told me something about it on air. I was like, well, I wish I didn't know. And now knowing that De Niro plays the titular Irishman, I also wish I didn't know that.
Okay. Well, I apologize.
Yeah.
It's there from the beginning of the movie.
It's true.
But they
Okay.
keep on going
That's
like,
all right.
this guy's so fucking Irish.
No, he's not.
Right. And it's like, I don't know if it's just because of his cultural position, but he looks more Italian than anyone in the world to me.
Does he try an Irish like, hi there?
He does. I know you said you don't want to
always
know
wearing a
anything else
bowler
about
hat,
the movie.
right.
Does
but
he
he's-
drink Jameson constantly?
He's carrying around a pot of gold the entire time.
It's
Well,
a
in The
little
Departed,
offensive.
didn't Nicholson try to do the Boston
Yeah.
for like a couple of scenes?
Right.
He is in and out of that accent.
Yeah.
I'm so Boston. Get me some chowder.
And then
Wicked stupid.
Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting also tries it, and I just
Yes.
wish that he didn't. People can be from all over.
Totally.
You know what I mean? You can talk like however you talk from all over the world because
There's-
people
right.
move to different cities from all over. You don't need to get into
Right.
there if you can't.
He
nail
doesn't
it.
need to be Irish.
If-
Boston.
Right.
You know, he doesn't need to be
If
like a
you're
Boston
that
guy.
famous
in
and that
movie.
iconic.
Right.
It's like
People will go with it.
you want to take the Sean Connery approach where it's like, yes, I'm from Russia.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Clark Gable.
Yes.
Yes.
Not Clark Gable. Cary Grant.
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant.
Yes.
Just do Cary Grant.
But also Clark
Clark
Gable.
Gable too.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
be classy.
Right. Just pick a voice
Just
and
pick
that's your voice.
Yes.
Right.
Patrick Warburton.
Yes.
Just do that. Like he can be from wherever. I would buy it.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
I had never met him before.
That was him. That was him in Empire Strikes Back, by the way.
Yeah, that's him.
Yes.
I love you.
I know.
Just for that one line, he tagged in.
I know.
I was trying to do him in that Alamo commercial or whatever he's
Sure.
in, where he goes, "Hey, Patrick, looking good." I know, but instead,
I never met him because he was the other.
He's the
Tick.
other Tick.
oh yeah, there's some Tick rivalry going on.
Is he the voice of the Tick in the cartoon?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
he was
That's
in
some
the,
other
he was
guy.
in the
That's
live
Townsend
action.
No, of
Coleman,
course.
my
I know.
friend.
I know. I forgot. I don't know.
Yeah, 3 different actors that played the role. But I met him recently doing like a comic convention, and he was like, "I'm sorry that my voice is so fucked. I've been fighting the fires up near my home." And
He's been fighting fires.
Like, he's like running in with like buckets of water.
I was like, "How's it been going?" And he's like, "Well, my brother-in-law's a firefighter, so he came down. He fought it himself." And I was like, "You just brought in a fireman to
help out? Wow.
But also to just be like, take care of my home." But also his voice sounded so fucking good
Yeah.
that I was so jealous that was him being like, my voice is gone. I can't do an impression of him.
On one of my other shows, Freedom, we were talking about these actors, and they seemed primarily to be around in the 50s and 60s and maybe the 70s, who basically they found a funny way of talking, and then their career was set.
Reverse
for life.
engineered from
and
that.
so it's the guy who talks like this.
Right. Walter Brennan won 3 Oscars? 4?
4? I think he got 2.
I think
he got 3.
I believe he
One
has
more
the
than Pacino, at
all-time
least.
record.
But but Patrick, I was trying to think of a modern equivalent, and Patrick Warburton is the modern equivalent.
Yeah.
He found a funny way to talk.
Yeah.
He did it on Seinfeld. He's talked like it ever since.
Yeah.
And he can coast.
Yes.
Just because he figured out that funny way to talk.
But his voice is that's his bread and butter, right? I mean,
Right, it's
he
incredible.
must be worried about the fires.
Yeah, but it still sounded so
Do you think he's
goddamn
insured
good.
his voice?
It has to be, right?
Yeah, his vocal cords.
Yeah, if
Should we
J-Lo's
all
butt
insure
was
our
insured,
vocal cords?
we should all insure his vocal cords.
Was her entire butt insured? Was like the butthole also insured, or is that a different insurance?
Scott, what a great question, and what a great moment to introduce you. This is Blank Check. It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their career and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby. This is a mini-series on the films of Jonathan Demme. It's called Stop Making Podcasts.
That's right.
And our guest today from Freedom, from You Talking You Two to Me, from Comedy Bang Bang, the TV show and the podcast, is Scott Auckerman.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me on. It was by request.
What a joy.
I appreciate it. But I did not demand. This was not on
He
demand.
requested. I heard the episode.
Yes,
It was a request.
Yes, you did say I would
He didn't
do that.
grab you by the lapels.
Yes, yes. I have to imagine the cheeks were insured.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Well,
I'm
that's what I'm
sorry.
saying. Obviously, the cheeks are insured because that's the thing that makes J-Lo's
That's
butt
the
J-Lo's
moneymaker.
butt.
Right.
We, that's just the topping on the butthole, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone's butthole is relatively the same. I would imagine the diameter of it.
I mean, I've heard some incredible things about her butthole, but I do think with J-Lo, you're like, well, if she lost any mass in the cheeks, it would affect her performance.
Yes. That's what I'm saying is like the butthole. I'm sure the inspectors came and said, well, you just have a regular butthole. We're
Right.
not going to insure that because you have the butthole everyone has.
And if her butthole got damaged, God forbid, it would affect.
God forbid. Please, let's make sure that we're saying that.
It would affect her day-to-day living. She would have a tough time.
Sure. She would have to suddenly sit in seats that have cushions.
Right.
Whereas right now she can go on the just most uncomfortable bench in Dodger
She
Stadium
can go anywhere.
and just be like, oh my God, I could sit here for hours.
And I know we're inside showbiz shop talk, but that really is her reputation in Hollywood. People go like, J-Lo's incredible. She's such a pro. She can shit anywhere.
Did you say shit or sit?
Both?
I Googled this, but I just got to a very weird website.
So you Googled whether her butthole is insured?
No,
Okay.
not. I mean,
Okay.
But here, come on, read some. Look,
Read some of it.
Ben, come on, give
Okay.
me this headline.
Come
It
on,
just has
Ben.
the greatest headline.
Are
my God.
copper pennies an effective treatment for bee stings? I don't
never,
know.
Never knew.
To rub them?
Bee stings?
Like if someone beasts you, goes into beast mode?
I mean, I remember hearing that if you put pennies in your mouth when you're drunk driving, you can bypass the breathalyzer.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that before.
I am so not
Sounds like
surprised.
a
But I can
that-
tell
great way
you-
to die.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
It doesn't
right.
work.
doesn't
I can
work.
tell you firsthand.
Yeah.
How about this one? Asparagus does it cure cancer? That's another question people apparently
These
are
are the
asking.
results you
Are
got?
you're
It's
just
like,
looking up
I'm
questions?
I'm on some website
questions.
that purports to answer the J-Lo
Ask Jeeves.
question.
What's a question?
And then it has populated other sort of weird
Okay.
questions that
the
people
most commonly
ask.
asked.
Yes, yeah.
I vividly remember that being a New York Post headline, probably.
It was in 1999. You
right
know,
for
that's
5 straight days. They
Yes.
were just milking that. Like, how much is each
Yeah.
cheek worth?
Usually you milk up top.
Whoa! Oh, congratulations!
So you introduced the podcast, right?
I did.
Okay, good.
I'm Griffin.
I'm David. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that was the only thing I didn't introduce.
Oh, okay.
But this is a miniseries on the films of Jonathan Demme.
Yeah, you said that. You said that.
And a couple weeks ago on Comedy Bang Bang, although by now, when this episode comes out, it will have been longer.
Long ago.
Some random man came on your podcast and chose at the end to promote my canceled TV show and podcast. And you then offered to him that you would hypothetically want to be on the Something Wild episode, which thankfully I heard.
Yes.
Well, you're a listener of the show.
Regular listener.
Of course.
Right.
Yes, by request, and wanted to do this episode because I love this movie so much. So, and who better than I to talk about this movie? A man who saw it opening weekend.
Sure. And I said to David, I think Auckerman maybe wants to do Something Wild. And he went, that makes so much sense.
Oh, okay.
It is kind of a movie where I go, of course this is a film you love. Like everything I've ever heard you say about your artistic inspirations, your passions, the people whose work you like the most, everything in your sensibility feels very like it's all collected in this movie in a certain way.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I watched it again 2 days ago, and I think my perspective on it has changed a little bit. So, but I'm interested in talking about that as well.
Right. Yeah, Jonathan Demme. I mean, I think of you as a Talking Heads fan.
Yes.
And
that was the reason I saw this movie in the first place, is because in 1985, I got very into Talking Heads because Stop Making Sense had just come out. I had obviously heard Burning Down the House before, but I had a best friend who was into a lot of great music, who got me into stuff. And so we would listen to the Stop Making Sense soundtrack a lot. And I was like, I got to see this movie. And it was not playing anywhere really in Orange County at the time. For some reason, maybe it had been out too long at that point. I can't recall.
I think it came out late 84 or something like that.
Yeah. So my friend and I drove up to Hermosa Beach to see it. Which was a bit of a trek for us. But it was incredible. And I think it was like a Wednesday night or something like that, watching Stop Making Sense and just like dancing around in my seat and all that. And I'm the type of person, when I see something I like, I then investigate it, and then I try to immerse myself in the people's other work as well, So not to the extent where I've really seen any other Jonathan Demme movies.
Well, we were talking about this the other night.
You did shout out Married to the Mob as well.
No, Married to the Mob.
Right,
I basically I dropped off after
Philadelphia.
After Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about this. He stopped making not only sense, but movies.
Sure. They became fewer and far between, and it feels like the sensibility that you respond to most strongly was this run of like
the
Something
more
Wild, Married
anarchic,
to the Mob,
right.
Stop Making Sense, anarchic kind of comedies.
Yes, as much as I like Married to the Mob, I think it leans a little too heavily on the cartoonish stuff that this film does not.
I not having seen this film in a couple years, having rewatched Married to the Mob recently for the show, was surprised. Even though I feel like so much of this movie's reputation, the way it's cited the most is, it's this movie with this incredible tonal shift.
Yes.
Right. I feel like that's the thing everyone always throws out. Is like this.
I had never really seen a movie that had a tonal shift at the time, and I think that's. I've responded to different things about it the few different times I've seen it, and I was trying to sort of like go back in time and think of what I liked about it when I was 16 and watched it opening weekend, because it was Jonathan Demme, David Byrne did the theme song.
Yep.
I did not know who. I don't think I'd seen Purple Rosa Cairo yet, so I don't think I knew who Jeff Daniels was. I did not know who Melanie Griffith was. I just was in for Jonathan Demme.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And what I think I responded to it the first time I ever saw it was, first of all, I think I identified with the Jeff Daniels character because I think all movies were sort of directed at me, a middle-class white guy.
Yeah.
And so
both tall men.
Yeah. And his performance was very funny, and I just identified with him and felt like everything that was happening to him could happen to me. And I, pretty straight-laced upbringing and stuff. But also the tonal shift was the thing that I had never really seen in a movie like that, where it was very funny, very charming, very energetic and quirky, and then suddenly got very dramatic and violent.
Yeah, and that it pulled that off.
Yep.
That it kind of tied to the success of that shift. It immediately made Ray Liotta a star. Because I feel like
true.
the buzz is like, oh, this guy comes in and he changes the temperature of the movie immediately.
Yeah.
Like he takes over the film.
Yeah.
And he'd never been in anything.
Yeah.
He
Well,
was
he had been in
nobody.
a soap opera.
Right.
For a number of years.
Yeah, and that's not nothing.
Another
David.
World.
I'm so sorry. I forgot about that he was on Another World. Yes.
But it made
Joey
him immediately.
Perini number 2 is how he was credited.
Oh, okay.
Do you know that off of this, Liotta was Tim Burton's original choice for Batman?
Yeah. I think we talked about it on the Batman episode,
You
right?
gotta get Pacino.
Well, that's the thing.
And he tried, but he was in the Sea of Love.
Pacino screen tested for Burton. He was like, too young. There's something too vital. If I were making this 35 years from now,
Sure, maybe.
happily, yeah.
So with Liotta, was he just like that guy has that kind of like maniac sort of,
I think that's the
energy
thing. I mean,
that-
Burton's talked so much about how his whole take on the character was he wanted him to be like an insane person.
Right.
And like Keaton obviously got to that sort of like bottled mania, but I think he liked how scary Ray Liotta was.
Liotta's also. Does he regret? Did he turn it down, or did the studio say
He
no?
said he flat out turned it down because he
Liotta's
thought it
one
was
of those,
silly.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's one of those guys who is sort of like. I remember I saw some interview with him about Field of Dreams. He's like, "Yeah, that movie's stupid though. Baseball field, the ghosts. That's
Shoeless
like,
Joe, put some goddamn shoes on.
He just
Gonna
he
hurt your
seems
toes.
oddly dismissive about like a lot of the sort of highlights of his career.
I saw him do an interview recently where he was like, "That was such a stupid decision on my part."
Sure.
Like,
Not
obviously,
to do Batman?
Yeah,
I
he
don't
was
know
like,
that he would have done Goodfellas if he had been in Batman.
probably
That's a
not.
fair point, right.
And he was like, Keaton did a better job than I could have, but it was dumb of me to
To just
dismiss
turn
it out
down.
of hand.
Yeah, well, especially when like the work dries up and you're doing, those smoking commercials or whatever he's doing now.
Chantix works for Ray. I like that he keeps self-identifying as Ray in those commercials. He's like, people come up to me, they're like, Ray, it's a new Ray.
Ray!
Raymond.
Which, by the way, he is called Ray in this movie, which is
Yes.
so
Yes.
funny. I don't have any evidence to this, but I almost wonder if it was written as Ray or whether it was just like he says Ray, he says his own name in that way so well.
Yeah.
We just got to change.
A
He's
lifetime
He's
of
a real Ray.
experience,
Right.
self-identifying.
Ray.
It's such a good name for this guy. He is also like, not to get ahead of the movie, but it's I saw Goodfellas on the big screen recently.
Sure.
Yeah, of course you watch Casino. You did.
I know.
Yeah, you were steeping yourself.
I was steeping like tea. But having watched his face a lot in the last couple of weeks, he is so fascinating looking because there is something so scary and hard about him and something simultaneously so delicate and like
because he's sort of
pretty
very
about him.
pale and right. He has kind of
Pockmarks
yeah,
in a
Yeah.
way.
interesting features.
Right, but then he's got these like startling blue eyes,
Yeah,
and
they're
he's
sort
like
of-
He
very
looks like he's wearing
delicate
mascara
eyelashes.
in this
yes.
movie.
He does. He's got the long eyelashes.
Yeah. And then this sort of like pursed mouth. He like simultaneously looks like a hooligan and like a male model. You
It's
know?
crazy. He. I mean, his introduction into the movie and his final scene in the movie is almost like, look, I'm a movie star.
Yeah.
When he does the hair thing, essentially, it's just basically like there is no purpose for him to do it either time other than to be like, I am effortlessly cool
Right.
and so magnetic that this looks amazing when I do it.
It is this thing I love. It is a very rare phenomenon, mostly because most scripts don't allow for this kind of thing. But when an actor enters into a movie and becomes a movie star immediately,
Well,
when
especially in a movie
new
like this
actor,
where the narrative is almost him being like, hey, I'm here
Right.
and I'm in charge of the movie now.
Right.
It's
You're
exactly
right, yeah.
halfway through the movie.
Yes.
It's basically
Right.
he wanders in from the side of the frame and is like, "Hey, how's it going?"
Hey, you. Hey,
right.
and then suddenly it's the Ray Liotta film.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
But like Jack Black entering the record store for the first time in High Fidelity is like an immediate like now he's a movie star. Now his quote just went up. You know, like Ed Norton in Primal Fear. Like movies where it's like someone who like had sort of been percolating around the sides or hadn't been doing anything.
The Minions.
The Minions.
Sure.
I mean, do you
Sure.
remember when they first showed up on screen?
I had never seen that movie.
And I went, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Where have they been?
Same.
Have I not seen them before? Were they on Another World?
Did you saw Donald Trump where he sort of pats the head
In
of
Home
the
Alone
minion?
2?
Yeah.
What a good
He
career.
just entered and was a movie star at that point.
Immediately. Point into the bathroom. You're like, that guy knows where the bathroom is.
He takes so many dumps. He knows exactly where it is.
His head is on a swivel when it comes to
This guy's
bathroom.
king of the shits.
By the way, here's my, not to get political,
Okay.
but here's my theory about Donald Trump.
Oh, boy.
So he moved into the White House. Remember, it was like a big thing of like, will he move into the White House or not? And then his security detail is like, I don't know. He wants to lock the door, and then he spends all morning in bed and all that kind of stuff. I think he's jacking off constantly.
Oh, wow.
I think he's got a thing where he's like, you can't, I won't attempt to do a Trump, but he's like, you can't just wander into my room whenever you want. I'm jacking off in here.
So he's sort of got a 13-year-old boy kind of mentality.
You're saying you think he does like 6-hour straight JO sessions?
Yeah. It's Jack Off City there in the White House.
Right.
And
the only time he leaves his room is when he's like, does anyone have any gold bond?
I'm dry.
Yeah.
And he's just like, all right, time to do an hour of work.
Yeah.
And then he goes back in.
You know, the crazy thing that's come out semi-recently is that apparently why he's like so private about everything and like locks himself in for so long is that he needs glasses.
Sure, that
But he doesn't want
like to be
people to see
photographed.
him
with the phone.
wearing glasses.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why like no one ever sees him tweet.
I was holding my phone close to my face.
Yeah.
I'm realizing.
But it's also why he fucks everything up on the teleprompter.
Sure.
That he
Yeah.
thinks glasses make him look weak.
I will say the teleprompter thing, you know, there's that thing where he basically, like, if he makes a mistake on the teleprompter, he incorporates it into the sentence like he meant to say it.
I mean, it's good improv. It's like that's 101 kind of
It's what
stuff.
I end up doing on every time I read an ad. So because I don't want to take another take of it. So
Right,
it's like
right.
you just got to incorporate it and work with it, you know. I respect him for that.
All right, look, Rachel. It's David again.
Okay.
It's December, Christmas coming up, New Year coming up, resolution time is coming up, right?
Oh, boy.
Self-improvement time is coming up. It's scary. People getting their heads about it,
It's
right?
so much pressure.
Right. So maybe you want to get in shape. Maybe you want some, to just sort of start eating a little bit better, or you want to feel more confident, have more energy, make healthier choices. There's all kinds of things people want to work on. Noom, it's this app, Noom, that is one program for all your health weight loss needs.
Wait, one program for everything.
Yes, you don't need to hunt around for training apps, for workout, suggestions or calorie trackers, meal planning apps. It's all collected within one app at Noom. And you can add a goal specialist. They've got a community members that can help keep you motivated and accountable. It's like a workout friend, all in one program.
It's an accountability buddy.
That's very good. They should use that. Noom, I hope you're listening. So some of the stuff that I've used Noom to sort of keep track of, things like meal tracking, right? Like figuring out what you're eating every day, make sure that I'm eating well and making healthy choices, and it helps sort of order my choices in a way that helps me make better choices. Maybe you want to keep track of your social life. You feel like you're staying home too much or going out too much, and it can kind of help you resist temptations and be comfortable in your social environments. You can interact with your goal specialist who can sort of encourage you and give you guidance and all that stuff. And it's all in one app on your phone. It's really easy to use.
How do I find it?
Well, you don't have to change everything in one day. Small steps make big progress. So you just sign up for your trial today at Noom, Noom.com/check. That's all you got to do. Visit Noom.com/check. Start your trial today. Noom.com/check. It's the last weight loss program you're going to need.
And it's the first one I'm going to use.
Something wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's his follow-up to Stop Making Sense.
Mm-hmm.
A mere year after that film.
Yes.
It's
Right? Or a year and a half. Maybe.
year and a half.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, exactly. I mean, like, because he had this. So he's this, Roger Corman filmmaker, and then he makes Melvin and Howard, which wins an Oscar and gets him out.
Becomes the hot new guy.
Then he makes this movie Swing Shift that's this like horrible protracted fight with Goldie Hawn over the cut, and
I
that
would be
kind of ruined
interested
him.
to see that, like what he wanted to do. With
You
we
can
have
see it.
and we can slip it
Yeah,
to
I'll
you.
send it
Oh,
over.
okay.
It's
Another
it's-
movie you're going to slip to me, though.
Yeah,
I'll never
I
watch.
also slipped Scott the musical cut of I'll Do Anything.
Sure.
Which you have been afraid to watch, but you have on your hard
Don't
drive.
do it, Scott. It's
I wanna-
awful.
I mean, it's interesting, but it's not an improvement. The
No,
Swing
I
Shift
know.
director's cut, you're like, this
really?
is
Okay.
better.
It's the
This
opposite.
is
You
sort
watch
of,
the theatrical version and you're like, well, maybe his version's a little better, but there's not a great movie here. And then you watch his cut and you're like, wow, editing is crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I've never seen the theatrical, so
You don't need to.
You don't really need to.
Yeah, it's kind of not important. But that takes up several years of his life and kind of kills his spirit.
It kills his spirit.
And
That's
he
more
does
of the
stop
sort of-
making sense right after that. And
And that
that experience
rejuvenates
is
him
so
more.
rejuvenating to him that he goes, this is what I want to do. I want this energy. I want this collaboration. I'm not going to do a movie that isn't fun. I'm not going to work with people I don't love. And so Something Wild, Married to the Mob feel very influenced by Talking Heads in a lot of ways.
Yes.
You know, they feel
And they both
like
have David Byrne, collaborating on the music and things like that.
yes. David Byrne's former wife plays the waitress in this, Adele Lutz, who is also in Beetlejuice. But yes,
I did not know that.
well, yes, Johnny.
And the rest of the Talking Heads are somewhat involved because Jerry Harrison's on the soundtrack as well.
Yeah.
This, and then Tom Tom Club is on the soundtrack of Married to the Mob.
Yeah.
Right.
But it feels like he kind of takes something from them of like filmmaking should feel like this.
Collaborative.
A joyful,
and-
collaborative.
Yeah.
It feels like New York City in a way.
This
I
is
think
such
so.
a good New York movie.
Even though it's barely in New
I
York.
know.
I agree with you.
It's also a great New Jersey movie.
It is.
Yeah.
Sure.
In Vermont.
yeah.
Yeah.
Going to New Jersey can be very discombobulating.
Yeah.
You could end up in a seedy hotel.
Right. Probably will.
But this movie becomes the first like sort of test run of his I'm going to have fun every time.
Yeah.
I can't control how the movie's going to turn out, but I'm going to make sure that making it is fun, and that tries to translate
He's
on screen.
gathering all these young actors who are not, I don't think, like proven names yet. Like Jeff Daniels, yes, he's done Terms of Endearment
Right.
and Purple Rose of
He's
Cairo.
like the one actor who doesn't get an Oscar nomination for Terms of Endearment, and then
Sure.
Purple
He's
Rose of
great.
Cairo, where he's a very late recasting. Because
Right,
that movie
right.
was Michael Keaton.
Right.
They shot 2 or 3 weeks with Michael Keaton.
Daniels could have been Batman.
I mean,
I mean, a few things.
No.
The dominoes fall differently.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about Michael Keaton.
yeah,
I didn't know
it was
that.
Michael Keaton. There are photos of him doing. Oh,
Sure.
heck, it's only got 2 Johnnies here.
Yeah.
There are photos of Michael Keaton. They said he was just too modern, which kind of makes sense. There's
Sure.
something fundamentally very kind of modern day metropolitan.
So
about,
Woody was like, you're too modern here.
Suddenly I'm here. 2 Johnnies, 1 Woody.
I love you, Michael, but you're too modern.
I love that your impression is always the "I love you."
It's the guy. It's when he's
It's
like
the
apologize.
sensitive-
The sensitive.
I love you.
The
you
pleading,
know?
yeah.
I mean, we're
I mean,
just
come on.
come on.
Yeah.
You know, I know we have to go to therapy, but I love you.
He's so sorry.
They're walking down the stairs in his apartment or something. Maybe he's
Yeah.
He's basically
gesturing.
trying to get someone into the bedroom at that point.
Right.
He's
Right.
just like,
Yeah, come on. You
Right,
know?
totally above board.
yeah.
Yes,
Melanie Griffith.
yes.
She's a young actress, right? And she's in things like Roar, and obviously she's Tippi Hedren's daughter.
I was reading through her Wikipedia, and it was crazy how she's like 26 in this movie.
Sure.
Is that right? Maybe a little older, 27 or 28. But she had already kind of lived 4 lifetimes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because she starts acting when she's 13. She's obviously like second generation Hollywood royalty. She starts dating Don Johnson when she's 14 years old, and he is
Nice.
22, which rules.
Oh, boy.
Depiction is not endorsement.
Well, as I believe I've told you about this, but Scott, have you ever seen Don Johnson's Spouse 1 and Spouse 2 not named on his Wikipedia page?
Interesting.
Very strange.
He married
one
2
and spouse two.
unknown women before he was 22 years old.
Right.
That he does not want to say who
Right.
they are.
Or I guess their identities remain a mystery.
Right. And then he married Melanie Griffith twice.
Yes.
It tells a whole story. His little
An interesting guy.
And the Melanie Griffith run is crazy because it's like her marriage run is like Don Johnson, 79 to 79.
Right.
Then it's like Stephen Bauer, 79 to 86.
Right.
Then Don Johnson too, 86 to 80. Like there's no gap in between. She marries and divorces within the same year every time.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's Johnson, Bauer,
And then-
Johnson, Banderas.
And then Banderas. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which always was one of the weirdest
They
celebrity
were together
couples.
for
to
a
me.
very long time.
But that always
He still loves her. Like he's always
says
giving
it.
his interviews.
I love her so much.
Right.
Mucinex.
family.
I give her the music.
Mucinex, honey?
Yes.
I shall bring it in.
I clear the phlegm from her
The
throat.
medicine cabinet.
But she talk about turning into a star though. I had never seen her before, and from minute 1 of this movie, she also is a star.
Well,
to
she
me.
was like
Her only big role, I feel like, before this is Body Double, the De Palma.
Yeah,
that was
That's
her
only-
breakthrough,
yeah,
but she had
exactly.
been in things like Night Moves. That was like
No,
a big
I
movie
know,
for
I know.
her,
Yeah,
where she was very young, and like from the beginning, it was very publicly known that she had like major addiction problems.
Right.
So I feel like she was one of those actresses where it was like, here's this like up and coming teen who immediately is succumbing to like cocaine and alcohol,
Right.
and is constantly on and off the wagon.
And she's got the famous mom, so that
She's got the famous mom. She married young. Like all of it, she was more sort of like, in a way, before her time tabloid fodder in that sort of sense. And then Body Double was the one where it was like, oh, this is a real actress.
She's so good in that.
And then Something Wild's the year after that. And then Working Girls the year after Something Wild. Is that correct? Or is there 2 years
no,
in
Working
between?
Girls
might be
88.
88?
88. Yeah. So I feel like Working Girl is where she finally became the movie star. But for me, this was it because I'd never heard
Totally.
of her. Yeah.
And what's crazy is I was like, right, Working Girl's like the turning point for her. She gets the Oscar nominations, a huge star, and then her 90s suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in a certain way, it was these
that
3
was it.
performances in a row crystallized. Like she
It's-
worked with 3 great directors, got 3 good parts.
It's so terrible for actresses out there.
It's fucking
I-
awful.
I was working for a company once and we were talking about a script, not my own, but someone else's. And I was like, don't you think you have to make this female part a little more interesting and like beef it up and strengthen the motivation, like to really attract a good actress? And they were like, no, any actress wants to do this kind of stuff. I go, what do you mean? They're like, we can get anyone with this. And sure enough, they did. I don't want to say the film, but they got a major Hollywood star to do it, just the way it was written.
Parts are so sparse.
Because they're
right.
so sparse.
Yeah.
And I can understand, like, suddenly you're Melanie Griffith, you do Working Girl, the whole movie is about you. And then another 4 years goes by and there is not a movie about a woman.
That's what's so nuts was I was looking at her 90s.
They had 2, and someone else got, Julia Roberts got
Right.
1. And
Right.
But I feel like the legacy was like from that moment, everyone decided she was a major star. She was like a
Sure.
serious actress to be reckoned with and like a box office force. And then you look at her 90s, and within
Well,
2 years, she's
she's
playing
in-
like the wife in Thrillers.
Well, she's
Yeah.
in Bonfire of the Vanities,
The
which
werewolf
is sort
in
of
Thriller.
which
right.
Yeah, Bonfire of the Vanities, that's true.
But
That
Tom
was-
Hanks and Bruce Willis, survived that movie
that's
no problem.
90?
That's
yeah,
90.
but then she
Yeah.
did a terrible accent in it.
She,
Right.
her accent, she's not great in that movie.
But it is kind of weird that she's the one who got dinged the most from that.
I mean,
in terms of after that, because then it's like Pacific Heights.
Paradise,
Milk
Born
Money?
Yesterday, Nobody's Fool. She's like the 4th lead or
Yeah.
whatever,
And Nobody's
Yeah, I
Fool's
mean,
the
it's-
best of these movies, but her
Yeah.
smallest role.
Mulholland Falls, remember that one where they're all
Yeah.
in the hats?
yeah.
They all got hats and guns.
Where
and
Nick Nolte
stuff.
can't stop fucking women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Cecil B. Demented is good. Cecil B. Demented is kind of like someone remembering that she could be
Right. At that point, that's like 10 years
That's
later.
2000. Yeah.
And it's doing a John Waters movie where he's like having to take her to like the outro zones of.
But that's the thing is they're literally a guy can get heat in a movie and an Oscar nomination, and there are 50 parts
Yeah. Yes.
that all focused on a white guy of that age.
Jeremy Renner.
The next year.
Suddenly had
You know what I
7
mean?
franchises.
Yeah. But
Long,
for
right.
Melanie
Yeah.
Griffith, it's like, okay, I'll play what wife and what.
Right.
There aren't the parts out there.
And she has such a specific thing going on.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, her voice
Two
is
specific
like,
things.
well, okay, Scott.
But in this, she kind of messes with it, and then halfway through, she sort of reveals herself more as classic Melanie Griffith.
Right.
Oh,
She-
yeah.
I mean, she has that voice that sounds
She's got
so
her
much
voice.
like a cartoon animal. That there's a natural instinct to put her in sort of the innocent babe in the woods kind
Especially
of.
when she's saying things like oink oink
Yes.
and moo moo.
Yes. Hee-haw, 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 hee-haw.
You know what's interesting?
She's
I
the
know.
Jennifer Tilly of her day.
Yeah.
Does this show skip around a lot? Is that okay?
skip
Okay.
around.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I will say, I think her look in this movie, in the first half of the movie, is so incredible. And I watching it,
bracelets up the arm.
the bracelets, the dark hair
Yeah.
with the bangs, and I realized when I watched this again, I don't know that I ever put this together, but I started dating a woman in 1989
Who was like exactly like this.
who has her look and her energy, and I think and was very quirky and fun. And I realized when I was like, oh, I think I started being attracted to her just because of this movie.
Yeah.
And halfway through the movie, when Melanie Griffith changes her look to be more Americana, I know at the time I saw it, I was like, oh, good, she's being more normal. But this time I was like, you don't got to do that.
Yeah.
It's a
yeah.
bummer.
It's a bummer.
Yeah. And it's also when her energy sort of just is depleted after that. Like she's not.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
She doesn't have the same
Then
sort
she
of like
becomes
take
the
charge.
girlfriend. Yeah, well, Ray Liotta also becomes the star of the film
does.
at that moment,
Yeah.
where she was.
He mugs Jeff Daniels and Melanie Griffith
He's
for
like,
the movie.
I'm going to be
literally.
top billed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. As much as I love this movie, there are a couple of faults in it, I think, now with age, me watching it. And that is one of them of the Jeff Daniels character is the straight. He says everything is the dorkiest possible thing that he can
Sure.
say early on in the movie. He is just a complete dumb idiot.
Munis.
But he's talking about munis, and she's like, "What are those? Municipal bonds." You know,
Come on.
everything.
Company plastic.
Everything he says is so lame. And yet, when I watched it in 1986, it was like, yeah, that's me.
Sure.
And
And
Melanie
how old are you
Griffith
at that
needs
point? You're
Melanie-
like-
I'm 16.
Right. And you're like, yeah, I'm a company stooge.
But you know what I mean? Of like,
Yeah.
I was 16, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll be a huge rich banker. You know?
right,
So
right.
that's like,
That's
those
easy,
are the
right?
options
Yeah.
open to me.
If she's attracted to that, yeah.
But then one of the faults of the film, I think, is that it is more of a compromise where he comes closer to her and she comes closer to him, but she should not have to come closer to him.
Sure.
It's almost like, hey, I'm a white guy. Come closer to my world.
Well, this is
You know?
this is my alternative read to that, and I had that same sort of irritation. The thing I had forgotten was at the end when he sees her again that she has developed like a whole new aesthetic persona.
Sure. Right. She looks different again.
What's different about it in that third
She's
persona?
this weird, like, old-timey sort of woman. I mean, she's got this, like, old sort of, like, Studebaker-looking, like, 40s or 50s car.
So she's sort of almost like pinup girl, like
kind
of thing.
of. I mean, it's almost like she's like a debutante.
Yeah, I'm trying to find if there's
Well,
a picture
the
of it.
second halfway through the movie when she changes her look,
Right.
there is a narrative purpose for it.
That's the thing.
This is
But-
her at the end.
Right,
She's got
that's
the
her at the
hat,
end.
Oh, yeah,
right,
the
the polka
hairpin.
dots. Right.
And the satin gloves, and then she's got this
Right,
weird
it's more-
old-fashioned car.
Yeah, so maybe she's back to quirky there, but
That's the thing.
Just the mere
Yeah.
change of her hair color is what was annoying to me.
And style,
on this watch is like blonde is classic. Like that is what is attractive. And so it's her like. And the narrative purpose of it in the movie is for her to like fit into this Americana and
That's
say
what I
to
was
her,
gonna say.
say to her mom and her
Right.
classmates like,
I'm doing
I'm
fine,
doing fine.
right.
I'm successful. And yet in the movie, it serves the purpose a little bit to me of like saying, hey, Americans who are going to watch this movie, don't worry. She's going to come closer to you than you have to go get closer to her aesthetic.
Well, see, if she didn't have the final look, I would agree with that. But I feel like the fact that they're like, no, but left to her own devices, she finds a new quirky persona
Yeah.
to adopt is like she's not being cured, quote unquote. It is
It's
more
not
that
like the
like,
Breakfast Club.
and
But
so
if
much
he
of,
went closer to her aesthetic,
Yeah.
and he does
By the end of it, he's wearing
in
the
in
sunglasses
the wonderful
and,
scene
like, yeah.
in the convenience store
so good.
Yes.
with wearing her sunglasses,
Yeah.
with the Romanis for Lovers shirt. All that is great. By the end of it, I will say like he looks so fucking cool sitting in that
Yeah.
window.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, with a white like members only jacket.
And he's got a fucked up arm or whatever, but he looks like he's in Less Than Zero or something.
looks so
Like,
good.
he looks so good and he looks so cool, but he doesn't look quirky in that moment, I think. And
Yeah.
if he were suddenly to be like, look, my life has changed so much that I think when you have a relationship, that's a lot of what it is like both of you finding what you love about the other person and incorporating that into your life. And I don't know that he incorporates as much
Too
of
much,
her
right.
life
Sure.
into his life as much as he says like, I'll put up with it.
but you also at that
You should
point
have had a Flock of Seagulls haircut.
you should
That's what
you should have
would have
been
made
a
this
total new wave
yeah.
kid.
You know, his suit is like still very cool looking when he gets it. Although
Yeah.
the white shoes are definitely, I will say, like I tried to dress like him and Matthew Modine and Married to the Mob when I was 19, and
Yeah.
I had a blue suit and I had white shoes and I had saddle shoes. I would buy like used saddle shoes in a thrift store, and I was basically trying to dress like those two guys.
And you had a Rube Goldberg type device around your bed to be able to dress as quickly as
Right, the
possible.
socks
Right,
were
yeah.
positioned at the foot of your. I mean, I will admit, like, because it is sort of silly that his big change is that he puts on a brighter blue suit.
Yeah.
But I was at a suit shop like a year ago, and they were really trying to get me to wear
Yeah.
an electric. They were like, "Come on, this is popping
cool.
your eye," you know.
And you were too scared to do
and
it.
I was too scared to do it. And I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, no, I mean,
I
this'll
do have
work
to say,
everywhere."
when I was 19 and I wore this like
Right.
blue suit and these
Jazzier.
white jazzier shoes and everything, I was looked at as quirky. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Hey.
but it's the barest,
Sure.
most
Right, that's all
minimal
it takes.
change that a man has to do in order to like have people looking at him going, "You're not normal."
But you also go like, you don't know exactly how much time has passed.
Well,
No,
his arm is
sure.
healed
His arm
by
is
the end.
right.
Sure.
So I think he quits his job when in the immediate aftermath when
Right.
he realizes. I mean, I have more to say about the themes of the movie later, but But I think so much time has elapsed by the time they actually get together at the end that it's
right. I mean, you talking about like the way a couple takes things from each other, meets more in the middle, and you know, sort of shares sensibility and all that. He's like kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out at the end of the movie because he still kind of is afraid he's never going to see her again.
Yeah.
You know, like he's sort of taken slight elements from her, and it certainly affected him.
Yeah.
But he's still chasing women down alleyways, trying to confirm whether or not they're Melanie Griffith.
Right. I do also, to this point about are they supposed to be with each other, and how much why do they like each other? And I think that's that this is all in that general theme for me. I do think it's one of the film's slight flaws, but thinking about it yesterday, I don't even know if it's a flaw, but I just wanted to bring it up, of the fact that there's never a scene in the movie, or if there was, it was cut out, where the two of them even get to know that much about each other's lives.
Yeah, right, because the first 45 minutes of this movie, there's no conversation.
It's fucking and it's like excitement.
Yes.
And
let's do this now.
And when they talk, they're both largely lying to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Right.
And so I never really got a sense of why he would fight for her, other than she represents something that he could get from another partner. You know,
Yeah,
of like,
sure.
I've been jolted out of my being asleep in not only my relationships but in society, and I can go now use those lessons with anyone I meet. Why is it her? You know what I mean?
So much of it I think is just an energy thing. Not just the energy between the two of them, but the energy each of them puts out. And that to some degree they represent for each other the things that they are lacking in their life.
Sure, but
at
that's
that
the
moment.
Demi
It's like the catalyst.
thing is like, right, they each represent, like, she's wild and free, and so he's sort of drawn to that. And he's this sort of like normie she can sort of correct and mess with, but also like they are both misrepresenting themselves in a way.
Right. And he actually is wilder than than what she thinks of him, and she's like,
and vice versa, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so Demi's whole thing is like, let's peel the image back and look at the people underneath as well, and sort of like slow the movie down, which I think sometimes, you know, can sort of baffle people, like, you know, well, the tonal shift.
Yeah,
and thinking about it yesterday, when I was thinking about that being a flaw, I also was thinking, you know what? It also is a movie where just when I was 16, I was not confused about that. And you may say it's because I was 16 and I was identifying with the Jeff Daniels character because of my position of privilege. And it's like, well, sure. Yeah, of course they would wind it. And sure, of course she would like him because
he's the leading man.
He's the leading man or whatever.
Jeff
But
Daniels, look at that chin.
But at the same time, when I say it's a movie, I mean, it is a visual medium, and there just can be unspoken things. Maybe they don't need an entire scene where they say, oh, the reason you're right for me is this, and the reason I'm right for you is this.
And this run of Demi comedies is so much about that sort of ecstatic reality, you know, through the aesthetics and all of that. I also feel like, you know, to some degree they're representing things, you know, they're representing ideas. But the other thing I think this movie does that is really canny, and it's striking watching this, how many movies have either knowingly or unknowingly ripped this film off in the preceding 30 years, the following 30 years, right? Where this is like such a well-worn, like, oh, it's like the uptight, boring guy who meets like a crazy, spontaneous woman. She like takes him out of his comfort zone. And all the ones that have followed since have like
the Manic Pixie Dream. She's like an archetype for something that's not an archetype yet.
But this movie like kind of creates the archetypes, and then everyone else sort of reduces them.
Yes.
Where
Whereas
both
the
of
movie
them
very
are,
clearly
are
is like,
so
no,
much
let's
more
bust out of those
layered
archetypes.
and nuanced
Right.
than that, where it is like the fact that he is lying and trying to pretend that he is more normal than he is.
Right.
And the fact that she seems so crazy and spontaneous.
But she really wants someone who's normal that she can just kind of fuck with. And when she finds out that he is more fucked up than he's been pretending,
she's a little freaked out.
That's a bummer to her.
Well, and also the like, you know, the sort of standard definition of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is the like complete lack of interiority.
Sure.
She only exists to show up and affect the other person's life.
Right. The sort of Natalie Portman in Garden State, Kirsten Dunst in Elizabethtown.
Like finally an interesting woman.
Right. You know all those boring women, you know?
These women.
Yeah.
But this film not only gives her like so much interiority, but also gives her a clear pathology where you understand why she spends the first 40 minutes of the movie acting like a lunatic. It's not just because she's a quirky film character.
Right. Yeah.
It's because this is someone who is like actively running away from herself and her own life and needs to create personas and live in this sort of impulsive way.
Well, and also she got with the bad boy, who is like a monument, like a cocaine golem, who's just like all energy. And she's like, yeah, I did that, and that was awful. So what about, like, could I find a normie, you know, to sort of mess with and corrupt, but also like that's not going to pull a switchblade.
Now here's my question.
You know,
I had
in the Quickie Mart,
because I remembered it being this way, and then rewatching it, it was more unclear to me. Do you think she, from the moment she sees him in the coffee shop, goes, "I need a guy to bring to my reunion. This guy's a good model"?
Well, no, I think it's when she sees him, you know, not pay. That must.
No. I mean, that's what I mean.
Yes. Or do you think it's more in the hotel?
Right. That's the question. Is it like, is she picking up guys?
Thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Because
I don't think she has a plan the entire time.
Sure. Maybe not. Right.
I think that's a little too. Like, she becomes, you know, an incredible genius at that point of like, you know, she's got a master plan. I think she's sort of living by the seat of her pants a little bit,
this guy away.
And she has sex with him in the motel, and it's good. And he has that phone call where he has the phone call where he actually proves that he, you know, instead of just going like, "Get me out of these handcuffs right now," you have my boss on the phone. You know, he like goes along with it, and I think she's excited by it. And
but there's a part of me that wonders if that's all testing, not to make her sound like a criminal mastermind. But she also strikes me as the kind of character where she unconsciously,
maybe
would never admit this to herself.
But that's sort
she
of
is on her way out
she's
of
worried
town.
about,
Yeah. And knows that, to some degree, whether or not she would ever connect these dots herself, that she wants to show up at her reunion with another guy because of the looming threat of Ray. Even though she thinks he's still in prison, that it's like a risk she doesn't want to take.
It's not just Ray, though. I think part of it is like she's this person who's like a great demi character, very empathetic.
Yeah.
And she can read people very easily. And she knows what her mom wants her to bring through the door.
But what she does not know is that her mom sees right through it,
which is
which I love.
Yeah, an amazing moment. Because in a normal movie, I think her mom would just
be a flat.
It would be a comedic
character.
scene of like, when is her mom going to find out the truth? And instead, her mom knows it from the jump.
And there's no
daughter.
There's just a cut. They're washing dishes, and she goes, "So you have like a real wife and kids, right?" It's just like that's the entry point.
It's so great.
But I think it also could be that she's on her way out of town.
Yeah,
and she gets more into this guy the more it goes along, and it pops in her head. I think the day of going to see the mom of like, well, why don't I take him? You know what I mean?
I would, yeah.
I think it's a slow. I think on both of their parts, it's a slow like learning to like the other person more and more as they hang out more.
And they're kind of playing chicken too. She's like, well, what if we did this? And he's like, okay, like I do that, right? Like you know, they're all.
She's like, well, now you're my husband in front of my mom, and he's like, okay, sure. You know?
She's just constantly throwing him into the deep end.
What's the name tag line where he's like, I never really had a strong opinion about them. When the girl is like, you know, that's right. That's he's willing to go with stuff. He doesn't need to wear his sort of Jeff Daniels label.
But she is. I mean, she's a very scared character, despite the film setting up initially as like, whoa, what a fearless woman who will do anything at any moment.
She's putting him in handcuffs, all that kind of stuff.
But there's these larger, substantial things that she's incredibly terrified of. You know, her ex-husband,
and maybe her mom too.
Her mom, I think too. The way that the people who actually know her will judge her.
Her classmates, all sorts of stuff. Is she afraid of what they think of her?
If she moves to New York City and she gets a Louise Brooks bob, you know, and all the bangles and the crazy car and whatever,
a lot of bangles.
A ton of bangles.
It's bangle heavy.
I will say also here's something that happened at my 10th year reunion.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yes, thank you so much. It was just the other
day. You made
it. Everyone came in kind of like putting on airs and trying to be the most successful versions of themselves, much like Melanie Griffith does in this movie. And I saw someone who was in high school was one of the like popular girls who never talked to me. And I started talking to her. I was like, so what's going on? She's like, well, I don't have a job. I just moved back in with my parents. And it was so like she was just so alive in telling the truth that it was like incredible. I was like, this is the most fascinating person here. And Melanie Griffith does not have the courage to do that in this movie
Right,
the
that's
way
the
that
thing
she
that scares
does in
her.
New York City.
Jeff Daniels is more terrified of the little things on a day-to-day basis, and she's more afraid of the bigger things like that.
Sure.
And when you know, anyone who dresses in sort of that outsized a way, has created that much of a persona, is ultimately trying to take control. You know?
Much like the way you're dressed today.
Yes. We should mention, I'm wearing a zoot suit.
Yes, of course.
You-
You have a feather in your hat.
You also have a green mask on. I don't know exactly
I
what's
have a
going
green
on right
mask
now.
on. Somebody,
saying-
please stop me.
You were smoking.
I was
when you walked in,
smoking.
and
We
you
should
pointed
mention.
at it and said something. I can't remember what.
I recently read the comic.
Very
all
different.
these years later. Very different.
Yeah.
I
Something
finally-
Wild comic?
Yeah, there's something wild.
Yeah, it's based on a Star comic.
Oh, boy.
No, but I was going to say, I mean, it's that thing of like, you want to control what people think of you. I'm going to establish
Right.
such a strong persona and such a strong aesthetic.
Keep you at a distance almost.
Totally.
in a
It's
way.
that thing where it's like, whether you like this or
Yeah.
not, I know that everyone's going to look at me and go, oh, wow, that girl's wild.
It's also fun.
It's fun.
I was a punk.
Yeah.
I like dressing up. It's also a way to sort of signal to other people
That's the point.
that
It's a
we are on the
signal.
same
Yeah.
wavelength.
But
Well,
you're signaling to people
it's all
like, this is who
communication.
I am.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot come to any other conclusion about me.
Yeah. Right.
You can like me or hate me, but I'm showing you exactly who I am. You can't place a reading on me.
I will say that I think I wish there was one scene where he. It is beautiful the way that she like breaks down her walls and gets rid of that like hey, the distance she puts him at. But I wish there was maybe one scene where he got to know her a little bit more, other than just
Yeah.
all the fake stuff. You know
Right,
what I mean?
It doesn't really ever slow down in that way, this movie.
Yeah.
The one scene that bums me out, and I wonder if it's like you could have removed that scene and put this scene in, is the one where she gets really angry at him for lying. I
think we both feel that way about those scenes in movies.
It's my
Right.
least favorite type of
Where
scene
they
that can exist in
suddenly
any
argue
movie.
Look,
about,
I just put one into a movie I directed, so I get it. He's
The dishonesty is what bothers me. you know?
I want movie characters, to look me in the eye and tell me the truth.
No, yeah.
No, but it is always kind of like a frustrating, slow down part of the movie. You know,
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I
defend your scene.
Okay, so
I'm not putting your scene on.
No,
trial,
no.
yeah,
But
as someone who just
as someone
had to do it,
who
yeah.
I didn't have to do it as much as you need characters to be at odds with each other. And when you're doing what I did, which is a comedy movie, which has like the mere, kind of very threadbare plot.
Sure.
It is a shorthand a little way to like be able to have drama in scenes, between characters. Is like, well, one of the characters is lying to the rest of the characters, and then
You're
it all
poking at
comes
these
out.
conventions.
A little
Yeah.
bit, but you also need characters to be mad at each other. And for the movie that I did, we shot several scenes where they're mad for different reasons, and that's the one that stuck.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I get a little like, okay, come on, you're not. But I'm a very logical person too. So when I see
Right.
someone like when I see her saying like, you were lying to me, in my head, I'm always like, well, you were lying too.
Right.
This doesn't make any logical sense.
Right. It's very obvious why he was lying to her.
There's a certain sort of psychology that makes sense to her being like, I'm the one who lies. I feel betrayed because I picked you because you seemed honest.
Yeah.
But it is still very hypocritical of her to have any
Griffin,
judgment
she
there.
drives off and literally stops 2 seconds later.
Right.
So it's the best
Right.
version
and then
of that.
throws the gun in slow motion. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like there is a weird reversal to her being angry because she's essentially saying like, I thought I was sleeping with a married man with
Right.
kids. And that was
Right. Yeah.
part of it for me.
Right.
And so
Which
wait,
is
you're
really
just
funny.
some schmo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because to a certain
I
degree,
wanted to be the one who gets to lie.
Exactly. You're
Right.
just a sad guy.
And I thought you were lying about and being exciting while lying, and
Right.
instead you're just lying all the time. Yeah.
I think there's a certain security to her being the one who lies and right.
Sure.
and
feeling like she
putting
can trust
him in the
person.
situation where he has to lie.
Yes.
Instead, suddenly she's the one has been manipulated.
Right. She's been controlling his narrative. The other thing is, I think she likes the idea of him being a married family man because it puts bumpers on.
Yes, that means that he can't fall
he
for
has
her.
to go back to normal life. This isn't going to be a wild
So when
weekend.
Ray Liotta shows up and says, "Get the fuck out of here," and breaks his nose, the easiest thing for him to do at that point is to go back to his wife.
I don't need this.
He'll
Yeah.
walk in the door and be like, "Well, I had a
I ran into a door, honey.
It's such a good touch. I had forgotten all the stuff with his wife and kids in the movie, not having seen it in a handful of years. And when there are the scenes early on where he steps away to call his wife.
Yeah, and you hear the busy signal.
Yeah,
on
and
the
I was
phone.
like, what a weird... did they just not remove that from the soundtrack? Was it like because it was a real payphone? Like, I had forgotten that was a pointed plot thing.
Sure.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was like a film goof.
Oh,
One of those film goofs?
Yeah.
Did you check the IMDb goofs page?
Flubs and goofs. But it is such a good detail that, like, at that point, you're ostensibly supposed to take him at face value, and he's
that's the
selling that
first-
phone call so hard.
But that's the first time where you're like, oh, shit, he's lying, too.
Something
Yeah.
weird's going on. Yeah. Something weird.
Something wild.
Something wild.
Also something different, daring, and dangerous.
Sure.
Of course, yes.
Um,
So I will say, if we're talking about theme, I think the other thing that was really hammered home for me this time that I was watching is I'd always known it's about a guy who learns to loosen up or whatever. And so when I was 16, I was like, yeah, quirkiness is okay, embrace it, and that was sort of where I was. But this time I was really just noticing how every scene is based on society not loosening up, and how every scene is about the conventions that we have in conversation, in politeness, there's a scene in what is the Daniel Craig movie, the serial killer Fincher movie?
it's called Skyfall.
No, it's
where he's a ruthless serial killer?
Yeah. I wanted to say Zodiac for some reason. But there's a scene that I think about a lot of times where the killer at the end, Daniel Craig knows he's the killer. And the killer sees him and is like, hey, how's it going? And Daniel Craig doesn't want to let on that he knows he's the killer, and he's trying to get away. And he's like, hey, come on inside. And he comes inside and then gets trapped in the murder room.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the killer goes, why did you come inside? You know that I'm the killer.
Yeah, you fucking moron.
It's just fucking society that you feel like if someone asks you to do something, you have to be polite. Now I'm going to murder you. And that's what this whole movie is like society as a construct has all been built on these agreements between people, which is that when you see someone, you're polite to them and you have a nice conversation with them. And when Ray Liotta comes into the film and starts gradually poking at that kind of stuff and says, like, she must be great in bed, right? And Jeff Daniels puts a stop to it and is like, we don't talk about that.
Right.
All the way up to the point where Jeff Daniels has just gotten the shit beat out of him and he's like handcuffed to a chair. And he says to Ray Liotta, like, violence isn't the answer, Ray, and you're going to find that out sooner or later. And he just sounds like, his parents talking
He's
or something.
becoming, like, moralistic. It's like the end of a G.I. Joe episode.
Yes, he's moralizing to this guy.
Yeah.
That was what was really fascinating to me this time, was just how every scene is about that, is about society has been built on these agreements we make with each other that we are not going to go crazy, that we're not going to flip out, that we're not going to break the rules. And every scene is about that until finally the end where he I know he doesn't kill him intentionally, but where he realizes that violence is
it's the way to
the answer
also,
at some point.
Like, what a beautiful demi touch that
It's all faces.
and that also it's Ray don't.
Yeah,
Like, he
sure,
sees
sure.
him turn around too
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
He knows the knife is out. He has no intention of killing this man.
But I just like that it's all in their faces. You don't see the knife going in or
Yeah, it's
anything.
all
Like,
the
you don't need to.
close-ups,
Yes.
and the
all
only
those
blood
great-
you see is when he does the hair move,
yeah.
which is so fucking cool.
Roger Corman apparently taught Demi, like, with the villains, whenever you're directing villains, tell them they're the nice guy. Like, keep telling the actor, like, and apparently Demi would keep going up to Liotta and be like, you're the nicest guy. You're the nicest guy in this scene.
Yeah.
Like, trying to pump him up. Like, you think you're the hero here. Like, that was apparently, like, his big move for directing
It works
Liotta.
so well. I do think, what you're saying, Scott, is like that's the larger thing this movie is interested in, is like, why does anyone behave anyway?
Anyway, why do we do the things we do? And then,
Why have we settled on this being normal?
It's sort of cliche that he quits his job or whatever, but at that point, I think Jeff Daniels' character realizes that everything is a sham.
Right.
And everything that he said the entire movie and the character he's been playing to Melanie Griffith, to his wife, to everybody, to society, and the characters we all play to each other are basically just bullshit. And so why not just be whatever he wants to be?
I mean, they're both people who kind of don't know who they really are, but they're
Right.
dealing with it in very different ways.
Right.
Which is what I think they find in each other, what immediately jumps out.
It's also
to
why
them.
they're both attracted to Ray Liotta, because
Totally.
he is very much like, I know exactly who I
Right.
am, and I am in charge of everything.
He's just a shark. It's
And,
like so clean.
You know,
yeah.
obviously she's afraid of him when he re-enters, but Jeff Daniels is attracted to him. He
So
wants to
charmed
hang
by
out with
this
this guy.
guy. Yeah.
And that scene where the cars pull up next to each other and the other Wall Street guy is like, hey, you want to get some pizza?
Yeah.
And Ray Liotta's like, pizza? Get out of here.
Yeah.
So do
Which,
you,
by the way, the wife's performance in it, she's the lead singer of Suburban Lawns?
Yes.
Is that right?
Sue Tissue.
She is so funny in the
Yes.
movie.
So funny, and I went down this rabbit hole because I was like, "Who is this woman? Her energy's
She's
so
got a
weird."
funny face. Just,
Right.
you know,
so I
just-
looked her
yeah.
up, saw that she was the Suburban Lawn singer.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing online about the fact that this is like her last appearance in anything ever.
Yeah.
She released no new music after this movie. The
She
group
just
had disbanded.
disappeared, yeah.
Right. She had done the one EP, the
Yeah.
one LP, and then had done a solo album. This movie, and then she disappears. And there's like vast online communities of people trying to figure out what happened to Sue Tissue.
Interesting.
Because she kind of was. The root of it seems to be.
Because their album was years before this movie.
Correct.
It's 81, I think.
Yeah, this is her last thing.
Uh-huh.
And her only acting role. They had gotten big because Demi directed their first video, which then aired on SNL. Back when SNL used to just be kind of like a collection pot for like
Right, yeah,
Penn and
a
Teller
variety
can do
show,
a like
yeah.
routine, and we'll like play someone else's short film, which would be so cool to see come back.
Oh, yeah, totally. But what were you going to say? It's rooted in...
Well, I think what's interesting is I was reading all these different articles. I found like 20 different articles of people being like searching for Sue Tissue.
Oh, sure.
And all of them come down to whether they're the person searching themselves writing the article or someone writing about the phenomenon of how many Facebook groups there are looking for her. They all seem to be that she represented this kind of Lulu-esque figure for dorky dudes who
Right.
saw her perform or saw her on TV and were like, this seems like the wild alt girl of my dreams.
Yes. So she's the Manic Pixie Dream Girl
Right.
for them.
Right. They never knew her. And after
Yeah.
like the sort of like public agreement of like, you will remain a front facing person. You will continue doing art. I don't need to know you personally,
Yeah.
but I will continue having a relationship with you through your music and your on camera appearances and whatever. The fact that she disappeared.
And turned her back on all of that, yeah.
Right, and none of these guys are coming at it from this possessive, angry way, but it's all clearly rooted in, like, this was my dream girlfriend when I was 17 years old.
Right.
And I have no idea what happened to her, and it kind of drives me crazy.
Right.
And people are just like, I heard maybe she's a teacher, maybe she lives here, maybe she does that.
It's interesting. I wonder where
It's
she
also
is.
just hard to not have not be traceable.
Well, I mean,
you know?
she's using a pseudonym, which is
Right.
a great
But
great
even
pseudonym.
they know her real
know her
name
real name,
now.
yeah. Sure,
I mean, it's public knowledge, and she they still haven't been
Yeah.
able to find her. And even like her bandmates are like, the last time I ever saw her was the day we agreed to break up the band.
Wow.
There was no communication, which is a year or two before this movie even.
Wow.
David, you going anywhere this holiday season?
You know what? I'm not actually going to travel this much this holiday season. January, I travel. I'll go to Sundance. I'm going to get on a plane again. But it is holiday season. People love to travel. They
People
get on
do
the
like to
plane.
travel.
They get on the train. They get in their cars, right? You going anywhere?
That's a good question.
Putting you on the spot here.
Maybe I might go somewhere if I had some better luggage.
Exactly. It's hard to travel without good luggage. And Away, longtime friends of the show, they create these thoughtful products that are built for modern travelers, okay? They started with the perfect suitcase. It's a very nice suitcase. I have one. And they've added all this wonderful essential stuff to it that makes it like a nice little traveling companion.
What kind of stuff?
Okay. Everyone has a unique travel style. So they've got a range of suitcases. You can get a polycarbonate or a nylon or an aluminum, right? Like in terms of what material you're looking for. They got a lot of colors. They have 2 carry-on sizes, but it always is going to fit in an airline carry-on, right? The dimensions are always going to be helpful for you.
Maybe on a weird little biplane?
I'm never getting on one of those. So wherever you are, whatever you want to pack, it's got the luggage for how you travel. So like Obviously, it has the charger, right?
It
Little
has a
portable
what?
charger, a little portable charger inside the bag. You can charge so many things with it.
That's so modern.
And if anyone wants, security is like, hey, take that charger out. You can just pop it right out. It's really easy. It's all designed for convenience.
All designed for TSA being the worst.
Exactly. They have a compression pad that can help you pack more into the suitcase if you want. They've got a hidden laundry bag that you can put your dirty clothes into. And they've got the little spinner wheels that mean that you can like roll it in any direction without, doing that thing where you sort of have to lift your bag and then it goes like clonk. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Away products are designed to last a lifetime. If any part of your suitcase breaks, Away's customer service team is going to arrange to have it fixed or replaced. There's a 100-day trial on everything they make. You can take it on the road, live with it, travel with it, get lost with it for 100 days. And if it's not to you, you can return it for a full refund as long as it's non-personalized. No ifs, ands, or asterisks. Okay? It has free shippings and returns on any order within the contiguous U.S., Europe, Canada, and Australia. And traveling during the holidays is crazy, but getting away can make every trip a lot more seamless. So you can visit awaytravel.com/check to learn more. And if you're in the U.S., EU, UK, Canada, or Australia, order by 11:59 on December 15th for free ground shipping with guaranteed free delivery by December 20th. So you can get it in before Christmas time. For additional last-minute holiday shopping details, check out their website, awaytravel.com/check. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great.
Just on her performance, I do have to say, like, it's not the performance a lead singer of a band would normally do.
Yes.
It is so underplayed.
Right.
It's so just real in a way. It's really an incredible performance.
Especially for this odd, like, post-punk, like,
Yeah.
very radical sort of, like, performance
She's just
arty.
playing such a normal person.
Right.
And it's really wonderful.
In a movie with lots of, John Sayles and all these directors
Yeah.
are popping up playing
John
weird
Waters.
One line.
Right, and
roles.
Tracy Walter, who's, like, in most of the Demi movies and is a couple years away from playing Bob the Goon.
Yes.
Right.
It always plays these kind of, like, scummy, sort of
He's
unsavory
in Married
types.
to the Mob. He's the chicken guy who
Right,
makes
yeah.
her,
And then in this movie, he plays, like, a liquor shop owner who
that
acts like
scene
a
is
British
really,
gentleman.
really-
By
and he's
the
got
way-
the big pipe.
He's dubbed in that scene, and I can't tell why.
No.
Like I because he talks normal when he's on TV.
Yes.
He does his regular voice when he's
Yeah.
on TV, but when he's in that scene, they have looped the scene with him talking British.
Yes.
Very
I
strange.
can't tell why.
Do you
He's
think
also-
afterwards he was like, what if, would
Yeah.
that be funny? I've got a pipe already.
Right,
I-
and they have to justify the pipe.
Well, I also
They
feel
gotta
like it was like
justify
they felt like the scene needed something or
Some
something like
weird
that. So they
thing,
brought
yeah.
him in. They're like, we need a boost on the scene. Just talk British. Like,
And-
yes, I do remember that. That's the back in
Glenlivet.
you know,
The
it's
scene
so
needed
crazy.
something wild. He is also inexplicably like fifth build in this movie.
Yeah, well,
He
even
gets single
like,
solo card
I think
billing.
Charles
John
Napier is
Waters
angry chef is fourth build. Yeah,
well, this
John
is the
Waters
thing we've
up
talked
there.
about watching all the Demi movies is he's one of those directors where every single actor with more than one line
right.
gets
front
opening
billing.
front
Yes.
billing.
Yeah,
right.
well, that's great.
I
mean,
love-
That is great.
the Feelies. They don't.
right. The
you know,
Feelies are in there.
Sister Carol.
Sister Carol's
Sister
in there.
Carol's, who's
Yeah.
great. By the way.
Yes,
Sister
who is
Carol's.
also in Married to the Mob as well.
Yeah.
These two movies are
Oh,
twins.
I failed
She's
to put that
the,
together.
you know, the
She's
hairdresser who
Of course,
hires
of
her,
course,
right.
of course. Yeah.
I did, speaking of the casting, one other thing that I was very inspired by in this movie, not this last time I watched it, but the time previous to this, and it sort of ties in with what we try to do on the Comedy Bang Bang TV show. But this is one of the times where this and Pee-wee's Playhouse to me, the way that Jonathan Demme populates the world of the movie is not the way that directors were doing.
yeah.
Back in this time period. My wife and I sometimes will be watching movies, and like if we see an Asian background member or a person with one line, we'll go Asian, and then 100% of the time they are Asian for a reason.
Sure.
Meaning, I was watching Smokey and the Bandit recently, and we were like, one of the truck drivers was Asian. I was like, whoa, Asian.
Sure.
And then he screams bonsai, and you know, and that is what
They've never just cast an actor who happens to be Asian.
happens to be Asian. So there is a thing where back in that time period, you felt as a director like you had to explain why there were these reasons why you would cast a person of color in this, and it would be distracting if it wasn't a white person, and you felt like you had to explain. So, for instance, even in Quick Change, like all of the black people in the movie are there to be intimidating.
Sure.
You know, and that it's code for when they pop up, it's like, oh, we're in a bad part of town. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, but this is one of those movies where, and when I was watching the Pee-wee's Playhouse extra material when the Blu-ray came out, it was just something that kind of seeped into my subconsciousness about how Jonathan Demme just is not concerned with. He's not concerned with like populating the movie with people of color for no reason, just to do it. He's more concerned, and this is where it differs from Married to the Mob, in my opinion. He's concerned with reality, in the scenes, and so he wants to make every time that you get to a new location, there will be something like the rap group practicing outside the convenience store.
I love that.
And he's a director who he lives in New York City and he sees this kind of stuff, and so he's like, I think that's fun when I see that on the street, so I'm going to put that in front of the convenience store. But it also is very real. Like the when Jeff Daniels parks at the church, and the little girl who comes up to him, it's not like he's doing it just to do it. It just seems like that he has made it's the most real background casting I've seen in a movie. Maybe ever. I mean, it just feels like life. Every situation feels very lived in.
It feels like he was such an appreciator of like cultures and culture at large, and he liked being able to like put as much in the stew as possible. Especially
all the music, he's using a lot of reggae. He's using a lot of Latin music.
And New York
Cliff
City in like the 80s and the 90s, especially like the village where he's living, is so much a melting pot of everything.
Yeah. And it really was. It was something that I was sort of dealing with on the Comedy Bang Bang TV show in a way of with that show, we got to cast whoever we wanted, and we usually didn't audition people that much unless it was kind of a specialty part where we needed something specific and we didn't know a UCB person who could do it, right? So it was something in the first year that you sort of find yourself like leaning into your biases a little bit, where like
people you know best, or
no, not even that. Where let me give you an example. So we had to cast a cop in something, right? And they come to you with, you know, at a moment's notice, they're like, who do you want as the cop in this thing? And then you got to search through your mental Rolodex of people you know of like who you want as a cop. And so your automatic thing, especially when you're doing comedy, is to say, okay, who is the most like imposing white guy I know?
Right, who's a guy with like a mustache and broad shoulders who like
tall,
fits the
fits the
iconographic notion of.
And then you start going like, well, does it have to be that? And then you go, well, we're doing a comedy scene, so if we're doing a comedy scene, they're all based on tropes of like previous comedy scenes and society tropes and stuff like that. So you find yourself when you're doing comedy playing into that a little too much of like, well, no, we can't have it be a woman or anything else because then you would have to explain it too much.
Right.
And the joke wouldn't come across. That's the excuse you start to give yourself.
Sure.
We need to make this as simple as possible.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And so then the second season, I was just like, I watched, I think it was then that I watched the Pee-wee's Playhouse thing, and I started thinking about this. I think I saw this around then too, and I was just like...
Cowboy Curtis is such a good example of, in no way would Larry Fishburne be the obvious choice of like,
and we're not
who's like an old
explain-
Western
Sure.
actor.
And what's her name? Who's the male person?
Reba, the mail lady, Esapatha Murkison.
Esapatha, yeah. All of that, and they were talking in their interviews about... I never got the opportunity to play this kind of character.
Yeah,
right.
You know?
Right.
And so I just basically started saying like, fuck it. It never is confusing to an audience. When I saw Something Wild, I was not confused of like, what are all these people of color doing in these minor roles?
Yeah.
And sometimes not minor, like the guy in the convenience store is so funny. But And they're not trying to tell me anything other than it's just that would be the truth in Virginia of who was doing these things, you know? So I started doing that on the Comedy Bang Bang TV show where it was just like, no, we'll cast whoever we want. And no one ever said anything about it because no one is ever confused by it ever again, you know?
No, it's like a thing that I think doesn't get talked enough about with Key and Peele, which especially in the later seasons, it seemed like they felt very emboldened to just be like, well, we'll write whatever sketch and we'll be the two people in it,
Right.
whether or not this would be a sketch about two black guys.
Right. Yeah.
And it goes from being like the first season, which is very much based on like race and culture,
Yes.
because I think that's the Trojan horse they use to sell the show.
Yeah.
Where by later seasons, it's like they're playing German Nazis.
Right.
And they're playing like British game hunters.
Continental Breakfast is like all that stuff.
Right, but there are like certain sketches where they're like, this literally could not be black men.
Right,
right.
Based on this
Yes,
time
100%.
and this geographic region and the positions they have and all of that. And they just
Right.
were like, but it's a fucking sketch.
Who
And
cares?
we'll wear
Yeah,
the
everything
costume and
is
do the
suspension. Yeah,
accents.
exactly.
None of it's real.
Have I talked to you about Armando Iannucci's movie yet? The David Copperfield movie that's
Yeah,
coming
you
out
were
next
saying-
year, where
right.
he has cast, he has gone to the full extreme where characters of color are parents to a white child,
Right.
or vice versa.
Yeah.
Right.
He makes no effort he doesn't care. Like, there's no effort to sort of have things line up
Right.
generationally or anything like that. He's just like, I'm just casting actors who I like,
Right.
and that's it.
We
yeah,
were
why not do
doing
that?
that
Sure.
in Comedy Bang Bang, and similarly, we were casting. Like, I want to be very non-specific about stuff because I don't want to necessarily blow up actor spots or whatever like that. But we were casting some parts similarly of the offspring of
Right.
someone else, and we were like, do we need to explain to the audience of like that they're a different race or whatever like that? No one ever cares.
No,
like
who
no one
cares?
just, everyone just sees it and goes, oh, adopted, or like makes whatever
Right.
mental connection they need to make in their mind, and no one ever gives a shit. And there was one point where a director came up to me, or maybe it was a producer or something, and was like, do you think we need to explain to the audience why this is happening? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
Just go away. And you never do.
It's.
And
I mean, it's that thing like in the Josh Trank Fantastic Four movie,
Yeah.
where it's Michael B. Jordan and Kate Mara are siblings, and you're
Right.
like, this is cool, and
cares?
you're like totally with it. And then there's one moment where they're like, yeah, she was a war child from Kosovo that we
They
adopted.
do
Yeah.
explain it in the movie. That's
And it's
right.
the one-
you don't have to.
Right, and look, the movie's not good, but you're totally accepting the two of them as siblings, and you can create whatever backstory you want in your head, or not think about it because it's a fucking made up movie about people who turn to fire.
Only the Human Torch turns into fire.
A
Let's be
person
honest.
who
Exactly.
turns into fire.
Okay.
But the
back
second
to,
they
back
say
to,
it,
back
yeah.
to Jonathan Demme, though, I love this movie for that of just, not only does he put a fun aesthetic into every location where
Yeah.
there's an interesting person who, and a lot of times it's John Waters or whomever, his buddies.
Yeah.
But it just gets very real to me. Just and every scene feels very lived in, and in a way that you would not be able to write into a script. I can only imagine the script didn't have any of these kind of details, and that's what
No.
a good director does.
Right,
A good
right.
director comes and adds a whole aesthetic to the movie and makes it a very fleshed out, lived in world, which I really
he
appreciate.
is such a great like sort of case study in like what does a director do, you know, to a certain
Yes.
degree. If someone asked me that question, I would pick a Demi movie and go like it is so clear what he is contributing here,
Right.
because certain people whose thumbprints are more visible, it also limits what they do, where it's like, well, but they're only picking material that conforms to their sensibility. And he was so good at adapting to all of these
Well, I
things.
think he said he was drawn to the script because it had that tonal shift.
Yeah.
And he's just like, no one's handed me a script like this. Like no one is doing this right now.
Yeah.
And this movie is coming out the year after Hours, and it's the same year as
That's
Blue
the other
Velvet.
movie that this feels like really of a piece with. is
But
After
those
Hours. Yeah.
movies are. I mean, Blue Velvet.
Oh, different. But
Yeah,
After
right.
Hours and this both feel like they're coming out of the same
Right.
sort of.
But After Hours, I feel like
Yeah.
it's all escalation.
Yeah.
Like it's just like things get crazier
Yeah.
and weirder and crazier and weirder, and it's all one night, and it sort of almost feels like a dream he's having.
And also the key to After Hours is that he's kind of a piece of shit. Like the
I
movie
mean, I love
doesn't.
that movie too.
Right.
Yes,
right.
100%. And then Blue Velvet is a little slower and is a little more like, right, let's take a peek at sort of the underbelly. But
Yeah.
that's the same year as this. They are sort of companion-y movies in a weird kind of
They
way.
had
I mean,
that
Blue Velvet
thought
had that.
seedness.
Yeah, Blue
Yeah.
Velvet has that tonal shift
Yeah.
mid-scene.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Which was
Right.
very confusing to me because I saw it the same year.
86, yeah.
And I will say I walked in 5 minutes late the first time I saw it and was kind of
What's
confused.
going on?
Yeah.
But I was laughing during scenes and I was like, oh, this is bad. I'm laughing because this is bad.
Yeah,
and then
sure.
the second time I saw it, I was like, oh, no, I think I'm laughing because it's intentional.
They're doing their job.
yeah. You know.
And there's that notorious Roger Ebert review of Blue Velvet where he's like, I can't handle what they're doing to Isabella Rossellini in this movie.
Yeah.
Where he couldn't be on board with the tonal shifts. He's like, I love this person, and then
He was like, this is a film of incredible craft. I don't understand why they're applying this craft to making me feel this uncomfortable.
Which, I think people just sort of had to catch up to.
Yeah.
Obviously, this
came around on
This
Lynch.
isn't as sadistic, but like Ray Liotta is sort of a sadistic character. I mean, he's, once he enters the movie, everything is sort of like
I will say
itchy.
It is okay. Just talking about construction now, and in order to get Jeff Daniels to murder Ray Liotta without the audience turning their back on him, it's a delicate construction of something.
Right.
I wonder if there is a version of this movie where it's not an accident that Ray Liotta runs into the knife. Would that be interesting? I also think the fact that Ray Liotta basically escalates his assault on Melanie Griffith to basically he's going to sexually assault her in that scene.
Yeah.
And that's why it escalates a little bit. I wonder, was that necessary? That's sometimes a crutch for these types of movies. So I wonder if it would have been, look, when I was 16, I maybe wouldn't have liked it if it wasn't an accident.
It's like a cold-blooded murder, basically.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
You took my woman. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. And if that wasn't part of it, where he's going in there and like saying, "Okay, fuck it, everything I've said about violence, I'm throwing it out the window because she's about to be raped."
Sure.
I don't know.
But it's such an interestingly complex moment too, because it's like, well, he's anti-violence, but also in this moment with the stakes and the danger being this high, he does pick up the knife and he holds it out in front of him.
I think he is not anti-violence anymore. I think he's ended the movie just realizing that that's something people say.
I think he is standing there trying to figure out exactly what he's going to do, but he's going to use that knife in some way, whether it's just to threaten him or it's to try to stab him in a non-lethal way.
I mean, he's choking the guy to death. I don't think he's choking him just to knock him out.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So,
and it's self-defense.
Can I read you a Demi quote? This is an interesting quote about this. He says, when he's reading the script, there was a quote, there was this theme of the flip side of putting on your neat suits and committing a certain kind of financial violence as a successful yet being a corporation. And the dark side of that guy is Ray, who's more of like a fundamentally violent person who solves problems, with his fists. I added the with his fist. Demi didn't say that.
But that's
nice punch.
An interesting question is like Ray Liotta basically is out there. They're both inflicting financial violence. They both have financial reasons for doing what they're doing.
100%,
and just Jeff Daniels' characters are socially acceptable.
Right.
And is that something that he figures out and why he quits his job? They don't explain it, but probably.
He's certainly paying for his meals by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's progress.
So he's learned
for him.
one lesson.
Exactly.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how funny he is in this movie, by the way? Like
so funny.
There are two things that I would, when I was 16 and I saw this, that me and my friend would do all the time, which are when he's on the bed with Melanie Griffith and she brings out the maracas and shakes him and he just suddenly mimes, goes, and like shakes it. I thought that was so funny. And then when Melanie Griffith says to her mom that he's handy around the house and he mimes a hammer and goes, it's like just two parts that made me laugh so hard when I was 16. And Matthew Modine has a lot of those types of
he's even
scenes
more
in Married to the Mob.
Right, energy. And there's the scenes in Married to the Mob like where they start, what is it, roaring for Tony the Tiger and stuff like where like it gets kind of a little extra real,
too cartoony
but
in a way.
It's more the tone of that movie.
Look, I like that movie a lot. I just seeing this, everything is so real in it.
Yeah,
other than the parts that get Married to the Mob to me are like John Waters saying, "Now we talking," and stuff like that. But I love Married to the Mob too. But
this is so tightly focused too. It's really just these two characters and then Liotta. Like whereas Married to the Mob is more of like a big goofy ensemble that people are coming in and out.
But is that thing you're saying? I mean, I'm now just thinking about that, like Blue Velvet, After Hours, Married to the Mob.
Right.
Not Married. I'm sorry. Something Wild trifecta, where it is like, let's pull back the curtain of normalcy and start acknowledging how weird things are.
Yes.
Like how fucking weird people are and all these things that we refuse to actually talk about that we're all thinking or feeling or doing.
Which was an 80s thing.
Yeah.
But because the 70s, what were they dealing with? They were just dealing with like, hey, everyone drop out of like all this bullshit. And
also the 70s are the first movies where they're like, yeah, society is fucked up. the war, mental illness, violence. You know, these are the movies where we can finally put this on the screen for the first time.
Yeah.
Like the 80s were this weird revival of a certain like 50s-esque like sensibility of like
But
we
then
have
they're
to
poking holes.
Right. And that was rather than like in the 50s it being like a sense of like traditionalism, like this is proper. In the 80s it was also hidden behind this sense of like achieve, succeed,
I will
like
also
have the
say,
status, have the wealth.
In 1986, when I was seeing this, I'm seeing it in Republican Orange County.
Height of the Reagan era.
Height of the Reagan era. I mean, everyone involved in this movie, from the people on the soundtrack to the director to the actors, are ostensibly not enjoying what's going on in politics at the time.
Right.
And that is most movies that were coming out at this time. One of my favorite movies of all time, Back to the Future. One of the biggest flaws of that movie is his happy ending is he gets a truck.
Right.
You know? And he goes and the music swells and he's like, oh man. And he's got a nice truck.
Yeah.
And so many movies are about financial
Security.
success. Success and having more than your neighbor has and all that. And so this is one of those first films I think that I had seen that was about saying like, hey, no, it's not about that.
He kind of throws it all away.
He throws it away, but not in a weird triumphant way where it's
No.
like, you know, the movie is unambiguously like, and now his life
he
is
doesn't
better.
have the scene where he like Kobe Bryant takes off his
100%.
jersey and throws it.
He seems thoroughly depressed by the end of the movie, but the one
He's
thing
got no safety
Right.
net. Right,
But
right.
he's
But
just
it is
learned, like, none of that was actually making me happy. And I
Right.
was spending so much energy trying to tell everyone else that I was happy.
Yeah, vice president. He's bragging about it all the
Right.
time, and
Everyone's like,
he doesn't give a shit.
No.
And like, whereas After Hours ends with him just showing up at work, sitting down, and the workday begins.
Yeah.
And that's more the sort of like, well, nothing is going to change.
Right.
By the way, I like the scene where Jack Gilpin, Betty Gilpin's father,
Yes.
says, "How do you figure a guy like Ray?"
Oh, such a good line.
My interpretation of it, because Jeff Daniels doesn't really have an answer, is that Jeff Daniels is saying, well, I'm a guy like Ray.
Yeah.
You know, like I killed Ray and it's society, it's acceptable in society the way that it happened, but we're no different. You know what I mean?
But it's also that whole, I mean, Jack Gilpin's so good in
and
that.
he just looks at Jack Gilpin and he's like, oh, you don't get it yet.
He's
Yeah.
got such a face.
You know?
Yeah.
Like such a dopey face, a great dopey face.
But there's also this whole thing with the Jack Gilpin character where, like, you know, Daniels is so freaked out that Melanie Griffith is going to expose him to Gilpin, which at that point...
to his boss, to everyone, yeah.
But he's so mortally terrified about the fact that Gilpin is there at the reunion. He has to see all of this. He can't deny it. He can't reframe it.
And also the fact that Gilpin has been talking about him behind his back.
Right.
He doesn't even know that. He doesn't even know that. Like, he's so obsessed with his image and being like, hey, vice president, everything's cool.
Right.
The fact that Gilpin has been staying behind his back like, oh, this guy's destroyed.
He wants
You
to.
know?
He wants to maintain a thing that he doesn't realize this guy is
Doesn't even
mocking him
exist.
for.
Yeah.
He's already been seen through
Right.
on that.
And then immediately
And Gilpin's
once,
like, whoa, this guy.
right, he's so impressed. He's
Yeah.
like, who fucking knew?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like what a good rebound. I thought this guy was done. And
Yeah.
throughout the way that he keeps on, like now he's like, well, let's get breakfast. Let's
But
let's hang out more.
That's what the great thing is even that is a sham. So
Right.
by the end of it, when he's like, dude, why are you leaving? Like he's finally
Yeah.
gained, you know, it's like, you've gained my respect again.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then that guy who attacked you is like so different than you. Like, how do you figure a crazy fucking guy like that? And it's like, well, you just don't get it yet. You're not maybe ever going to get it.
Well, the other element too is like, how do you figure a guy like Ray is like, look, that guy's violent and scary. And now with the end we came to, I know I don't want to be him, but also, how do you live that sort of like unattached to anyone's expectations or perceptions of you? You know, how do you get to that point, even if it's to a negative end, where you are living that honest a life, where Ray just doesn't give a fuck?
yeah, he just does what he's going to do.
He does what he's going to do at every single moment. Yeah.
Okay, Rachel, it's
Okay.
Christmas.
It sure is.
You're giving holiday gifts, right?
Yeah.
You got to lay out a lot of cash
They're
to make
so
everyone happy.
expensive.
Yeah, and it's all at once. Hits you right at the end of the year.
Oh my God.
But you don't have to overspend on these gifts. Why spend more than you have to? Finding the lowest price is easy. You just got to use Honey. It's a free browser extension that automatically finds the best promo codes wherever you shop online.
Oh my God. It's better than Black Friday.
Exactly. It's a year-round Black Friday.
Year-round
You
Black
always
Friday.
get the best deals without even trying on anything at over 20,000 sites such as Amazon, eBay, J.Crew, Sephora, Expedia, Target, Best Buy, and more. It's so easy. I have used it for years. You put it on your browser. You install it, right, as an extension on your browser. It just sits there, minding its own business. Come to checkout. If on some website you're buying something, it just pops over for a second, does its work, and then suddenly you're saving money.
So you don't even have to do anything.
No, you literally have to do one thing at the beginning of your life, and then that is the end of your worrying about honey. It does everything else for you.
Well, that's a sweet, sweet money saver.
Exactly. It's very sweet, hence honey, right? It's found over 10 million members, over $1 billion in savings. It supports over 20,000 stores online. It has 100,000 5-star reviews on the Google Chrome store. So if you're buying gifts this holiday season, you need honey. If you're not, you probably know someone who is, so do them a solid and tell them about honey.
Well, you told me, so thank you.
Exactly. It can help make sure you're getting the best price for whatever you're buying. It's free to use. It installs in just 2 clicks. You can get honey for free at joinhoney.com/check. That's joinhoney.com/check. Please use our URL. Another movie this reminds me of, in a weird way, is a movie that also ends with a bloody confrontation in a bathroom, which is Fatal Attraction the next year.
Uh-huh.
It's the same kind of ending. It's all like stark white and then blood on the tiles and all that. But that's the movie where at the end, and they shot it that Glenn Close killed herself and that was that.
Right.
And everyone was like, it's not juicy enough. So they have it that Ann Archer shoots her. And then we're back to normal. That movie is very much the opposite of this, where it's thank God.
Oh, thank God.
The monster's been purged.
Thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
society is back to
the
where
last shot is Michael the portrait of Michael Douglas and Ann Archer. They have a nice picture. The camera rests on it, and it's it's okay.
Don't
go
worry.
home.
The monster,
Yes.
If there's a monster in your life, you can kill it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's what I love about the fact that she's affected a new persona at the end of the movie, where it's he didn't cure her. He didn't bring her to a normal state. That was more her trying to impress all the people who she actually cares about in
I do
terms of
think
judgment.
the blonde hair, I wish she had gone back to the dark side.
I agree.
Fully agree.
And that's not for me going, it gives me more of a boner. I just mean to say that
this is just a great look. It's
well,
a very
not only
chicken.
that, I just mean to say blonde, it was code in the 80s for the blonde cheerleader, the all-American dream girl.
This sort of the
girl next
John
door.
Hughes
Yeah.
lexicon, visual lexicon, very much.
Right, and it is that thing. It's it's the same as the Ali Sheedy thing, where you're it's kind of annoying that the movie, The Breakfast Club, ends with them being well, but now they fixed her, right?
She's gonna be fine.
It was so easy. She could just be pretty and normal looking.
But it is thematically appropriate in The Breakfast Club, because that is what they're all just can't I just be normal? Oh my God, that is what's actually, driving most of those characters.
I just like that.
But
I feel
it's not a costume for her at the end. It's,
No.
it's her going
it's no good. Yeah.
look, guys, that was a phase.
Yeah, right,
I've cleaned up.
But the fact that this movie ends on, I feel this take on the character that is her real self is the self that is constantly looking for other personas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
also it's fun to dress up.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? It's
Right.
it's fun to wear.
Absolutely.
She
That's
looks
fashion.
fucking cool at the end.
Right,
You know what I mean?
it
It's
might change. She might change her style 5 times over the next 5 years.
but
that is the real version of herself, is the one who is constantly adopting new styles.
Sure, and why shouldn't people? I mean, she the cars she drives, her style. She looks fucking cool. She should be able to do that, and that's not her putting on poses or whatever. That's her knowing how to dress.
It's also the demi filmmaking principle, which is why wouldn't I do the things that are most fun?
Yeah.
Why would I worry about the things that feel realistic or normal or standard, rather than making every scene the most interesting it could be, hiring the most interesting people, laying in the most interesting song on the soundtrack.
The colors too. Every color feels very vibrant.
And Married to the Mob as well. Every location where if they're just going out to dinner, it is an interesting location,
Right.
And that's so incredible to me. Of you having just made my movie. You go out on these location shoots and you usually don't have a lot of money. And so you're just I was watching the scene where the guy pulls up to where Jeff Daniels is hanging out by the payphone, and he pulls up on his motorcycle with the dog in the back.
Yeah.
And I'm they would try to talk me out of that on my last movie, because the dog is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the motorcycle is extra, all this kind of stuff that even the car in the Between Two Ferns movie, we had to settle for what the car was, because we needed a double for the car in another part of the country, and the car we had settled on, which was really unique and fun, they weren't going to be able to find that car on the other side of the country when we shot over there.
Sure.
So it was like, you have to, and they gave me 3 cars to choose from, and we're like, they were normal cars, and you have to pick one of these 3 because those are the only that we, like just getting into those kind of things and watching Demi basically be able to do. I'm sure it was a discussion, but that was important to him. And he made sure that the resources were allocated to make sure that they could get the dog and the motorcycle, because he happened to see that. Like, that's in the credits, I think it's a famous guy with a motorcycle dog or something that he was like, that's awesome. Let me put him in the movie. And every scene has those in a way of like stuff that a normal line producer would be like, do you really need this in the movie? And for Demi, it's like, yeah, we do.
I read a review. I think it was maybe a Married to the Mob review. I've been reading so many reviews from the time for all these movies as we've been watching them. And someone referred to him as like the great collector of cinematic bric-a-brac.
Right.
And there is like his aesthetic of like, when you briefly see Melanie Griffith's apartment and you're like, of course, that's exactly what it looks like. Of course, it looks like a 2 boots. Of course, it's like everything, But even the scenes that take place in relatively normal environments, he finds ways to put things like that in, put different types of people in, put different energies, different activities.
Even a scene where he goes and confronts Ray Liotta and, the cops are there. That's a way more interesting restaurant than would normally be in that scene, you know? And when you're scouting locations like that, you are sort of, I was very attracted. I actually wrote a lot of the Between Two Ferns. I wrote it while we were shooting a lot of times, and I would write a scene because our location manager, Eric, would bring me a really interesting location.
So you would write to it.
And I would write to it. Yeah. In fact, the whole scene on the swans in the swan boat was not written.
Yeah.
It just was like, we had another scene that we had to do in that area. So I said, bring me other stuff in that area so we can fill the day. And he brought me that lake and I looked at it in the swan boats and I just like started imagining a scene of the 2 of them on this swan boat. You know what I mean? And it's very inspiring. That's the cool part about making a movie sometimes. And I think that's what Jonathan Demme seems to have done, is like just getting inspired by a place that seems real. Because when you're writing a script, and especially back then, like everyone who wrote a script was pretty much like a white dude, right?
Right.
With no real life experience. You know, like anytime I read a comedy script nowadays, I can always tell it's like a 28-year-old comedy writer who doesn't know anything about life, right?
Yeah.
Who's like great at jokes, knows nothing about life. So, but when you read a script, it's all very much like a writer can't even imagine an interesting place to put a scene in.
No.
You know what I mean? They've all they've seen are other movies, and so they write what has been in other movies, which is the diner or whatever it is.
Don't they often literally say like X place in X movie, like in a script?
So a lot of times it's like that. And so for the Ferns movie, what was interesting, and I feel like we were doing it sort of like what maybe Demi did, is just I said to our location manager, Eric, just bring me interesting places.
Yeah.
And then I'll write the script around that, which some of them didn't work out. Actually, Lauren Lapkus's character's house we had was so interesting. And just the most nuts place we'd ever been to in the middle of nowhere that had every room was decorated different and was so crazy. And there was a massage chair in one room. I was like, okay, we're going to do a scene where she's like in a massage chair.
Yeah.
We ended up having to even just cut out the shooting because we were so over budget. And I was like, we don't need any more in the second act. But that's what I see in Demi a lot of times is I don't know that it's the reverse for him of like, okay, we need a restaurant. Just find me interesting places, as much as he sees places and goes, I want to shoot there someday.
Yeah, and I think there's also like the bric-a-brac element of just him like collecting things. I mean, it's talked about so much that like he was so part of sort of the Lower East Side art scene that he was going to all these shows, going to theater.
And so his mental Rolodex is filled with this sort of
in terms of like
Sister Carols.
Right, why not have Sister Carol run the diner?
And then sing a
and
song
if you
over
have
the
her,
credits.
then she should sing a song. Right.
Yeah, which, by the way, the other recurring element in the movie is the song Wild Thing, which I think is really interesting. David Byrne in his opening
Right, he
theme,
works it into
the song, which sets the scene. Then they sing it
when they
as
pick up that family.
as they're driving. They sing it a few different times in the car,
And it's all like different cover, different energies.
different energies, and then she sings this incredible reggae version at the end, which is not lip syncing, which is great because the version on the soundtrack is actually very different than the one.
I was
that she
trying
does
to
live.
find. I just have to rip it.
It also
Oh, I have the soundtrack. I can send you.
No, but I
But
mean
you
the
wanted the
version from the
from
movie.
the movie. Yeah, there's no.
It's one of those annoying things.
But it also, you never think about how Wild Thing, the lyrics include the words like "I love you" over and over again.
Yeah.
Like if you slow that song down, it sounds very tender all of a
They're
sudden.
it is
very
the
strange.
theme of the song, "Wild Thing." I
Right.
think I love you.
Yes.
because
I want to know
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah,
I wanna know.
Yeah,
thanks for singing that.
Yeah, well,
you have a beautiful voice.
Oh, well, I don't think so.
should share it with the world more often.
And that's just to point out, the script is basically what you're saying. Emax Fry, he wrote this in film school. He was in his 20s.
Yeah.
And Demi just picks it off a pile. And Emax Fry has a pretty nondescript career where he
he is an interesting person, right?
he
Isn't
is,
he
'cause
like
he's
a
in
sort
the
of
New
a,
Order video.
Yeah,
right.
he's an artist. So
Right.
originally when I watched it a couple of days ago, I was like, who wrote this? I
Right.
bet it was a script that was just kind of normal that Jonathan Demme Demi-ized, but I actually think Emax Fry is a more interesting
That weirdness
person
was
than
in
that.
it, and Demi.
Fox, he finally got an Oscar nomination for Foxcatcher, which
Yeah.
is sort of wild and may
He
have been
wrote
a
on The
situation.
Alienist and Band of Brothers.
Yeah,
and he's had a weird
The
career.
Foxcatcher script also might have been like he wrote it a long time ago and it got sort of like picked up and rewritten because
I
15
feel
years
like
later.
he was
Right.
a big part of it. I remember reading
Maybe he
interviews
was.
at the time where they were explaining the process. I mean, he was trying to make that movie forever.
Right.
But I think
And
Bennett
apart from
Miller.
that, he wrote like Palmetto and Where the Money. He wrote
Right.
these sort of like hard-boiled, late 90s
well,
movies.
he wrote and directed Amos and Andrew.
I've never seen that.
Which is one of those things where you're like, this premise is so risky, but it is almost a film that someone should remake because there's kind of something in there. Do you know what the premise
never
of
seen
Amos
it.
and
What
Andrew
is it?
is?
I'm going to show you the
Amos.
poster.
Amos and Andrew is. I'm trying to remember how this is set up exactly. Nicolas Cage is like a petty.
Yes, I don't need to see the poster. I
It's a
remember
wild
it. I never
poster.
saw it.
He's like a petty thief. I mean, I think he's pretty similar to his like Raising Arizona, where he's like a redneck
he's
robber.
a scumbag.
Right.
Scumbag. He's a scumbag.
But the main crux of the movie,
And he's reaching over to take Samuel Jackson's watch right on the poster.
the main crux of the movie is that Samuel
I'm
Jackson
sold.
lives in a fairly wealthy suburban neighborhood.
He's like an intellectual, right? He's like a writer.
And the next door neighbors who don't know they've moved in see him bringing in their stereo system and think that a black man is stealing the stereo system from the next door neighbors.
Yes.
And so they call the cops and it becomes a complete like sudden death SWAT surrounding the house situation.
Very funny situation.
Very deeply funny. And somehow Nicolas Cage ends up in the house with him. The entire premise of the movie is that he is actually a criminal and no one thinks he is.
Right.
And Samuel Jackson's in his own home and he's being surrounded by
Yeah.
cops.
It's
The movie is not incredibly elegant.
and an interesting theme. I don't know if it lends itself to a comedy these days.
No, not necessarily. Yeah.
I'd love to know
Yeah.
what
Well,
the deal was with him.
I feel like what
I
I remember
wonder-
hearing.
Oh yeah.
Well, no, was that Bennett Miller had been trying to crack Foxcatcher
Oh,
for a
sure,
long
sure.
time and couldn't, and then hired Emax Fry because he was such a big fan of the Something Wild script to take a pass at it and to try
I
to
wonder
catch
how
it.
much of the
Yeah.
script made it into the movie. That's what I'm interested
Yeah.
in. Is
for this
is
movie or for
Something Wild?
Yeah.
I have to think. I just don't think that him as a young guy in film school would have written scenes like the one in front of the church where the little girl comes up and asks
Sure.
if he's okay,
Right.
or even the convenience store scene.
Right.
Like a lot of it seems very
the way the convenience store scene just that he stays there and it escalates. Like maybe
Yeah.
you write the beginning of that scene, but then Demi's like,
Man,
"Yeah, we're
I
afraid."
feel like here's what I think probably happened is in the script it's he goes into a convenience
Right.
store, buys binoculars,
Right.
and that's about it.
That's-
and instead it in directing the film, and maybe it's giving Demi too much credit and Emax
Yeah.
Fry not enough, but it just seemed every scene seems almost heavily improvised in a way.
Definitely, but the bones of the script are so solid. Like
Yes,
I think
sure.
the movie is so perfect structurally.
Yes.
Even just the fact that it's like, I know you were saying that you wish that they revealed a little bit more of themselves to each other, but there's something kind of nice to the fact that like you as the audience member don't know any more than they know about each other.
Yeah.
That you have the exact same amount of information, that the introduction is just him trying to, stiff the bill.
Mm-hmm.
That it's this perfect little tiny meaningless act of rebellion at the beginning of the film.
Right.
That like sets the stage for everything and that's being circled back around at the end.
I wish I knew why she likes him. That's the only other than he's revealed him. Other than and this is true when two people are honest with each other and sort of strip away all the artifice from their life, that can get people closer, and maybe it's just that. I mean, look, people fuck all the time for no better reason than they want to fuck each other.
He's a cutie. He's a cutie. Good-looking guy.
Right. He and Modine are the two tall, floppy, golden lab boys.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel's really, and like you
he's
said,
such a dog. There's
he is one of the funniest actors who's not ostensibly like a comic actor.
Well, that's what's so funny about Dumb and Dumber
right.
is no one wanted to put him in that movie.
Right.
And when I saw Dumb and Dumber, I was like, oh, he's being funny again,
he's
finally.
Right.
But
there's that crazy story where like everyone told him not to do Dumb and Dumber, and because he wasn't quote unquote a comedy actor, they paid him
$50,000 to be in Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, that's it was crazy. Like Jim Carrey makes
Jim Carrey got $7 million.
Yeah.
Huh.
Right, but they were
Jim
like,
Carrey's been doing this for like 5 minutes, doing movies.
He had two big movies earlier that year.
Well, the other problem is I read they never locked in his Dumb and Dumber contract. They meant to lock it in before Ace Ventura came out, and then they took too long, and the opening weekend it came out, it jumped up.
Right.
And then every weekend after that, it kept jumping up $1 million until finally they were like, okay, $7 million. Yeah, we'll get it. But he was supposed to be like $100,000 or something before Ace Ventura came out.
Because Cable Guy is the 95 and that's $20 million, right?
Yeah.
That's how quickly that all.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's that one year, in that one calendar year,
three
the
massive $100
Ace
million
Ventura.
Ace Ventura was in like spring and Mask was in the summer. And
then Dumb and Dumber at the end.
Dumb and Dumber's, right. And it was like, I mean, the numbers are like, it goes from him being like a 100,000 guy to like a 750 guy to a 7 million guy or something.
Yeah,
like
within the space of months. But Jeff Daniels is just like, oh, I think I'll be good in this. And everyone's like, you're not going to be good in this.
Right. They're like taxing him. They're like, we'll let you do it, but we're not going to give you money.
They wanted him to turn it down. That's why they offered him $50,000.
They were trying to insult him.
But like, he's arguably the best actor in that. He's funnier than Jim Carrey in that movie.
Yeah,
like,
great.
That's not the movie where Jim Carrey, I mean, he's funny, but he doesn't leap. Like, I don't remember his parts as much in that movie.
And I feel like Jim Carrey has been very open about the fact where he's like, the whole thing was like Daniels and I together.
Yeah.
Sure, right.
Coming off of two movies where it's just like Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey and everyone else is sort of like talking at him.
And going, oh, you're being weird.
Right. That movie's so much like, it is bizarre watching that movie and remembering like, oh, it has genuine scenes of emotion in it.
Yeah,
Cable Guy's 96. I just wanted to correct the record. I'm sorry. Because he does the Ace Ventura sequel in 95.
Yeah,
he does it that fast.
It is interesting. They don't overdo it, though.
I think it's like a good balance, but
it's weird. Like, Ace Ventura literally has one scene where he drops the Ace Ventura stuff where, like, he feels bad about whatever he did to Courtney Cox.
Right.
I don't remember what it was. All I remember is he goes into the room to go like, hey, and almost to apologize, and the Ace Ventura character is dropped, and then she's kidnapped, and so he doesn't have to do it.
Right, but it's like a bummer, whereas like you have that one like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired scene.
Well, they always talk about
good.
that scene, about how everyone wanted that scene cut.
Yeah.
And Jim Carrey and everyone fought for it to be in there because they said, well, this is the point of the entire movie, which is interesting.
The characters are so fucking dumb that you at least need to like understand what's driving them emotionally.
Yeah.
Because none of their decisions make sense on a scene-to-scene basis. Right. Watching this, you go like, and theatrically released studio comedies are barely a thing anymore.
Sure.
But you're like, could you imagine if you went to a theater to see what was ostensibly a mainstream studio comedy film and there was a movie with this much personality?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone, I know why I saw it. I don't know why anyone in the world would have seen it. You know what I mean? It was marketed. You're right. Look at the poster. It's marketed like, hey, it's fun. This is going to be a fun time. You know?
And Married to the Mob was the same thing. I feel like he was trying to like make a hit. Mm-hmm. And in both cases, they did okay, and then weirdly did better with critics. And he was like, no, I want to make something mainstream.
Right.
Like, I think he felt this pressure to make something that connected with audiences.
And yet then he's like...
He makes a serial killer movie.
He makes a serial killer movie that everyone else is like, this is too gross.
Right.
And that's the one.
And then his AIDS drama is a blockbuster. Like, he makes two, on paper, incredibly uncommercial films.
Sure. I mean, Silence of the Lambs was commercial film. I mean, that was a big bestseller, you know.
But it's so, I mean, you think about it,
is funny to think
so
that people
gruesome,
are like, this is
so
too much.
procedural.
Like, we would
so
rather
violent.
watch Silence of the Lambs than this fun Married to the Mob movie.
Wait, you're telling me this lady's married to the mob?
Yeah.
I'm out. Meanwhile,
Should we play the box office game? I feel like we
Yes.
Should wrap up.
Yeah, I feel like, is there anything else we want to talk about? There's a little moment, it's just a tiny thing I want to call out, but when Ray Liotta has sort of captured Melanie Griffith and he's driving her into the motel they're going to stay at, there is literally a garbage fire.
New Jersey.
Yeah, there's just
That's
a
coding for New
garbage
Jersey.
can on
Yeah,
fire,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
such a
is there an
like,
acapella group around it? Or
no, that's how dire things are.
Wow.
Not even a doo-wop group will surround this garbage can.
But honestly, that's the kind of thing that, again, back to this point, your line producer would try to
Don't
talk
do
you
this.
out
We
of.
need to shoot. We don't have time.
I went to scout this diner, and when I went to scout it, it was when just the regular people were there, and I saw this woman in a wheelchair there, like an older woman, and it suddenly brought back all of my memories of like growing up in a place that had a lot of diners like this, and I was like, oh, that's what this is. This is a place that families go to, and this is a place that where it's like this gets grandma out of the house,
Right.
and as hard as that is for her, this to my mind shitty diner, a place that I would never like. If you were like, hey, where do you want to go out to lunch, I would never even think about, but that's the special place for them.
Right.
And so I said, make a note of it. When we shoot here, I want to have an older woman in a wheelchair, because that just made it real to me.
Yeah.
And that became a problem.
Right, they were like, there's no need for it in the script.
There's no need for
right.
why do you want this? Why it's gonna
distract.
It's gonna
People's eyes
cost.
are gonna.
It's gonna cost this much money. Why are you gonna watch this? And weirdly, it with the blocking the way it ended up being, she is not in frame, and it's such a bummer. To me, that's the interesting thing of trying to do that balance of make something real and make it a fully lived in world that people are going to recognize and go like, oh, I understand why you're shooting here. Other than just someplace pretty. I think that's...
Well, it's also the thing, I feel like people who haven't, like you work on one film or one TV show and your perception immediately shifts from why aren't most things better to how does anything ever end up good?
Yes.
And so much of it is in the way that you were saying, like, they don't want to cast an Asian actor unless it's explicitly in the script.
Sure.
That all the things that kind of make a movie transcendent, the little unspoken things, the things that aren't overstated, the details that are unnecessary but build out the world, are things that 15 bean counters come in and go, we really don't need this.
It truly is not the studio or the producers a lot of times. It's time. You're fighting against time.
Right.
And
it's allocation of energy and money, and everyone's just thinking
where are you
about
gonna put your
like
foot down?
where are we,
Right.
sometimes it's like, where are we going to find this person? Like the guy in Fargo, the Asian actor in Fargo, is so funny,
So good.
and he's like speaking in that Minnesota accent, and
Mike Yanagita.
It may have been they just found the right actor for the role, and he happened to be Asian, or maybe he was Asian in the script. I don't know, but I'm imagining in the script it being Asian and someone coming to me as a director and saying like, I don't know where we're going to find this person.
Right.
This is just going to be too hard. Can we just compromise and make it,
Well, that's the thing. It's so difficult, and everyone in every position has so many things to think about at any point in time that very often people are trying to find the path of least resistance.
Yes.
And want to pick their battles very sparingly. And to have a movie like this where there's like this much demi in every single shot.
Yes.
When there doesn't need to be. When there is a very, very simple, conventional version of this movie.
The opposite of it is the opening montage. That's the flip side of it. The opening montage is all these New York shots, and they are not the pretty. I was watching it kind of going, these are not pretty New York shots.
No.
Like there's that famous it's not scene, but part of the book about Bonfire of the Vanities, where the second unit guy goes off and gets a shot of a plane landing and spends like a ton of money on it. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? This is not even going to make, and he's trying to do it right at sunset. He's trying to get the plane landing at sunset, and it costs a ton of money.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is not ever even going to make it into the movie. Why are you spending this much money on a plane landing shot? And it's in there for like a quarter of a second. Meanwhile, like Demi is doing a montage trying to set the scene of his movie, and the shots are not the star. The song is the star.
Right.
And it truly is.
He's making a music video for this David Byrne song.
He is.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting is like it's suddenly the shots are not pretty, and they're not really interesting shots of New York. So you start focusing on what is essentially a theme song to a movie,
Right.
which is something they don't really do anymore.
And he's letting David Byrne set the tone for the movie that's about to follow.
Yeah,
I noticed. So the score for this movie is Laurie Anderson and John Cale.
Yes.
Yeah.
And John Cale had done the score for, is it Caged Heat? It's one of the early Corman
Right.
movies.
And Laurie Anderson did Swim to Cambodia.
Right.
Which didn't have that music in the stage production.
Right.
Did they do they do it together?
I don't know if it was a
because
collaboration. The
once,
music is fairly incidental. I mean, the score.
but once Ray Liotta enters, the entire score changes.
Right.
The
So
tone,
maybe
the
they hand it off.
instrumentation.
Right.
I
Yeah.
wondered. I couldn't find an answer to it. But if it was like you cover the comedy half, you cover this. I don't know which one did what, or if they were working together on everything.
Yeah, he uses a lot of pop music throughout the first half of the
Right.
movie, and then I in fact when I saw they had done the score, I made a mental note to try to listen to it, and I don't remember any of it until really kind of the final scenes.
It becomes
you know?
right. I mean, that's the scene where it stands out the most is in the bathroom, but it becomes more of like a synthy thriller score.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Box office game.
Good movie. Yes. Box
Great movie.
office
I think it's a great movie. I think it rules.
I really love it. It's
Yeah.
been so much fun watching these movies.
Yeah.
The 80s output. We haven't really done the 90s movies yet.
I love when a chef runs out, that trope, and chasing them.
He's
That
got the-
shot also
So fun.
lasts.
And
But
our
it's not-
friend.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Charles
Who's the-
Napier.
Charles Napier. Yeah.
Right.
Irate chef. That's his credit.
That shot lasts so long.
Yeah.
Like you keep on going like, wow, they're really making Charles Napier run here.
Right.
And he's running for like 45 seconds into traffic.
Yeah.
Can I also say that reminded me of the fact that the car shots in this movie are done really well.
Yeah.
I just directed a lot of car stuff and was trying to figure out how to do it in a way that was like aesthetically fit in for our movie.
But on a technical level, it is hard. There are only so many places.
There's only so many ways.
Right.
That's what our script supervisor said to me at a certain point. She said, everyone always tries to figure out a new way to do it and then finds out that there is only one way
Right.
to do it. But I watched. I had never directed a car scene before, or really anything. So I watched a lot of different ones, and the Squid and the Whale was one that I was trying to sort of base all of our car stuff on. But the interesting thing about the car stuff in this movie is it's all real. It's all done practically, which is very important to the reality of the movie. I personally do not like car scenes in. They're in big budget movies now where
Yeah.
you can tell it's a green screen.
and they're
Yeah,
not
it's-
looking at the road.
It's
and-
crazy.
It affects the performance.
It's not even the
Yeah.
not looking at the road or anything. It's like they sacrifice. They go, we want to the actor. It's usually we want the actors to be able to focus on the acting and not having to drive
a car,
around
right.
a moving car, you know. So they usually sacrifice it for there, or for some reason they want the shot to look prettier.
Right.
To me, it is a bad trade-off.
Yeah.
The reality of the car shots in these movies is so great. You can tell they're there, and that scene where Napier is chasing them is so great.
It's insane.
It's a practical shot
Yeah.
of the car outracing this guy running
Yeah.
at him, and he's running as fast as he can. They're driving.
You just
know,
watch him lose distance every moment.
But the one thing I want to say about the car stuff that I thought was really interesting, I had never noticed before, is the fact that Demi shoots it from different angles when he first gets into the car, and then all the way to going to the hotel. He shoots the three parts of that three different ways.
Yeah.
And so he does French overs, the first thing, and then he does close-ups from the front to each person, and then the next time he does it, he does the two people in the shot close-ups from the front. And it's I think he's doing it probably to make them not look samey. He's breaking it up that way, but I also wonder if he's doing it intentionally in order, like usually you do a French over because it's like you're peering in on a conversation that it's a little more, like, oh wow, we're going to let you into this thing but it's interesting. I wonder if he did that intentionally.
I
If
think
he
so.
wants to
His-
up the intimacy
Yeah, I
as
mean,
they're getting
like
to know each
Silence of the
other.
Lambs is the most extreme example of it,
Right.
but his coverage always feels so intentional and in a way that he had to fight for because people would be like, we don't need this shot. This isn't an effect. This isn't an important thing. And it's
Yeah.
not just him collecting coverage for the sake of having editing options. It always feels like he has very specific setups that can change within a scene to
Yeah.
reflect the shifts in the dynamic between the two people talking.
They're doing a car thing, and I don't know what tunnel it is, but basically they could have gotten away with not shooting in that tunnel, and
Probably annoying.
probably annoying to everybody. But he knew he needed to feel like this character is leaving his world,
Yeah.
and it can't be a CGI thing, or it can't just be like, oh, we'll shoot it inside
You
the car.
need
and it
that
doesn't
energy
matter.
at that point in the movie.
Yeah, so.
What a good fucking director.
And last thought, Ray's apartment reminded me of a lot of the kinds of houses that I hung out in growing up. And it was like, I don't know. It was just like weird to see it on the screen and sort of thinking about her character and like escaping the hometown stuff. I was like,
this movie
happy.
hit you.
I was kind of happy that I'm in New York City and like have moved on with my life.
Right.
Sure. That. Yeah.
It is interesting. I could tell this time that's a set, and also the hotel where they first hook up. That's a set as well. You know,
because so much of it is so real.
Yeah.
Well, the part where like Jeff Daniels is looking out and going, "Oh, not much of a view," and then she comes over to kiss him, and he like shuts the curtains. Then it turns into a set after that. You know, which is like great, but it yeah.
So you're saying directing a film has ruined movies for you, essentially?
No,
you see the seams everywhere.
I do talk. I would talk to some of my crew people about what they focus on when they watch movies, and our script supervisor, I was like, are you just looking for flubs the entire movie? And she's like, yeah, a little bit. One thing that in our movie, I kind of, because of the way we were shooting, I was like, we cannot pay attention to continuity. I'm sorry.
Right.
He shot a Peter Dinklage interview in the afternoon, and then everyone changed clothes because they're getting on the road. And you know what I mean?
Well, it's also knowing your priorities, where it's like, you're not going to throw out a take, especially if there's this much improv involved, where something magical happened.
Continuity. That's
just
the
because
Scorsese
continuity
thing.
fucked you up, right?
Like watching Goodfellas, I watched it 3 times that summer, and the third time I watched it, I was like, "Oh shit, this is a continuity nightmare."
But he just doesn't care. He's like,
cigars go in and out of Sorvino's mouth, from behind. Like he'll have one in his mouth on his close up, and then it cuts to behind, and it's gone. And
I was in the pilot for Vinyl, the worst thing Scorsese's ever directed.
Oh yeah, that was pretty bad. Where were you again?
I think that is
that might be. I mean,
true.
He's a phenomenal career.
I do think it might be
that
the
might
worst
be the worst thing he's ever put his name on. Right?
Yeah.
But he was
but
great.
Still, I watched it. It wasn't bad.
And he sort of openly said, he's like, I'm so jealous of these people who can keep track of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I tried.
Right.
I just don't know how to do it.
Paying someone to do it.
Yeah, but I don't know how to do it. I mean, it stresses me out too much. I just let people do whatever they want, and I pick the takes I want.
Right.
But he would like talk
he
about that where
he
he'd be
doesn't
like,
really care though, and then he'll throw in, he doesn't continuity errors. He's like, it's fun for the audience.
He said that even about spatial geography though.
Right.
He was like standing in a corner and he was like pointing his fingers at different things.
Whereas like Spielberg is notoriously the guy who walks onto a set and he's like, of course the cameras will be here. Like,
and Cannavale was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I can't figure it out. And he was like, you can't figure it out? And he's like, no, I'm no good at it. When I was younger, I tried to do it. Now I just put the camera wherever I want. And I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
that thing never makes sense to me. It's kind of incredible to hear Martin Scorsese go like, I don't understand the 180 rule.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out on my movie, and I'm so happy that Megan Rutledge, who was my script supervisor, and my DP Ben Kasulki, and my first AD Cassie Lehman, they all like sort of helped me every scene, and they were trying to say like, well, normally you would do it this way, but every once in a while I'd be like, I see it being over here, and they would go, well, that breaks the line. And I would go, I don't know. I just see it. And there's stuff in the movie. I'm not saying like I'm a visionary and they don't know what they're talking about.
Sure.
But they did say to me like, well, if you see it, like, who gives a shit? Let's do it. Right. And there are scenes in the movie that technically break the line, I think.
Yeah,
sure. But they're really vital to the movie, and I'm glad we did it.
It's also like, if you're making a comedy, the angle that will make it funniest should trump.
Sometimes I don't even do it that way, though. It's just they're just like interesting angles that I'm like, I feel like we should get it from over here. I don't know why. And I think I was wrong a couple of times, because there is one shot of Zach in Will Ferrell's office that was like, I need this to feel like a bigger space. Can't we back up? And we only use it for literally like a second and a half, because I don't think it fits with the rest of the coverage, so I'm probably wrong and I wasted time doing it. But anyway.
All right. So the box office game, I'm going to look at the top 5 for November 7th, 1986.
I try to guess the box office, Scott, because I'm a weird person with a broken brain.
This movie opened at number 7, $1.8 million. It eventually
kind of unlucky
grossed,
number 7, if you ask me.
Sure. It grossed like $8 million. It was not a big hit.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
And it got some Golden Globe nominations and nothing else. It didn't get the Oscar.
Right, it got
the only demi movie.
All
of the
3 of
80s.
them. It got actor, actress, supporting at the Golden Globes. Ray Liotta feels like he should have been been a slam dunk.
Yeah,
100%.
I think when I watched it, I was because the LA Times talked about him so much. That's
Yeah.
how I knew about any movie or album was the LA Times. They talked about how he's like suddenly makes this big splash. I was expecting him to win the Oscar that year.
But it is that crazy thing, as you said, this is the only Demi movie between 1980 and 1993 to not at least get an acting nomination.
97. Keep going. Yeah. Beloved's the next one. Yeah.
That doesn't get a nomination.
Right. That doesn't. Right.
No, I'm saying everything between Philadelphia and Melvin and Howard, including
the
those
supporting
two.
actors that year were Michael Caine for Hannah and Her Sisters, who won. The two Platoon guys, Berenger and Defoe.
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper for Hoosiers, which is sort of like a double nom with Blue Velvet.
Makeup for Blue Velvet.
Well,
Right.
it's the same year.
Oh, right. That's the thing I always forget.
Right. And
It was
then
literally
Denholm, Elliott, and Room with a View, which is sort of the weird one, but I think that's like, oh, well, you know,
He's Brody.
great old guy. We love him. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So number one at the box office, 7 weeks in, it's the most successful film of the year, bar Top Gun.
So it's the second highest grossing film of the year. Remember a couple episodes back when you told me that Top Gun didn't do well
no,
in
I
theaters?
Forgot. I was. You don't have to go back. To
No,
that.
but I want to drag you a little bit here. David argued that Top Gun didn't do well in theaters and only connected on VHS.
I was flopping it with another thing.
Risky business.
Risky business. It was
Pretty risky move.
Classic David.
When I was 16, I remember my health teacher. I had a student TA period, so I was like back in the teacher's lounge like for a period, and I remember my health teacher wanting to know what kind of movies I liked, and he's like, have you seen Top Gun? I'm like, I'm not gonna see Top Gun. He was like, what do you like? I was like, I like something wild, you know. And there were certain movies back then that I intentionally did not see that I still have not seen to this day. Top Gun is one, Pretty Woman, like all these films that I was like,
were the big
mainstream like everyone talks about how much they love it.
The Avengers of their day.
Sure.
I guess so, yeah.
Pretty Women and
I do want to see
Top Gun.
eventually, and especially before the sequel.
the new one looks pretty fucking rad.
Should I see Godfather?
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is it
Pretty good.
Yeah,
Okay.
good movie.
Watch it.
What was the
made.
second most successful film of 1986?
Well, that's what I'm trying to think.
It's a comedy.
Of
This week
1986.
of the year.
Of the
I mean,
year.
it's number one. I believe it's been number one for like 7 weeks.
It's a pretty cool movie.
I guess so. Ben likes it.
It's not Beverly Hills Cop?
No, that's the next year, I
That's
believe.
87? No.
No, Beverly Hills Cop was.
Yeah, isn't wait, Beverly Hills Cop is like 84. Yeah. 84.
That's Murphy right after he left SNL, right? Beverly Hills Cop is the first post SNL thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that's not the answer.
movie we're
that's
talking
not the answer.
about.
It's 1986. It's a comedy. It's the second highest grossing film
It
of the
gets
year.
an Oscar nomination. It's a total out of nowhere hit. It's if I say the thing that it is, you're going to guess
It gets
right
one nomination?
Probably.
It's a real strong character type.
It's a really strong character, like an archetype. It is a Crocodile Dundee,
There you go.
and it gets nominated for Best Screenplay.
Right. Did you see Crocodile Dundee? The other sort of
As a student of comedy,
I think I did. I know I had it on tape. Like I feel like I caught up with it on cable and taped it on cable.
It's a real quotable movie.
give us one.
That's not a knife.
Okay.
This is a
You
knife.
got another one?
I like how you started your impression on the second knife. That's not a knife. This is a knife.
That is such a weird fucking phenomenon.
It is. It's crazy.
I also love how like Australians were like, yeah, he's like not a big deal here.
Well,
like
I
the movie
remember
was
watching the Paul Hogan show on
Yeah.
channel KCOP in LA because it was very weird. There were a couple of shows that were like export or imports rather from other countries that would show like titties or something on local television.
Where just no one was really checking in.
It was very weird. And so I remember whenever my parents would leave my brother and I alone in the house, I remember we would turn on, and this is like in the early 80s or whatever. So the Paul Hogan show was one of those where I just assumed he was like
king shit in
he was like Benny Hill or
that was
whatever.
the thing. Everyone like was like, oh, he must be their chief export. This is they're giving us their finest, and they were like, no, he's like.
He's one of the guys.
Yeah.
You see him on TV. Sure.
He's like the Wayans brothers for us.
Right.
All right, number 2, it's an Oscar winner. It's a major director who we talked about on this episode. I feel like when this is coming out, it's kind of slumming it for everybody, but this movie is great. Now you watch this movie, I feel like you have a great time.
It's not Scorsese.
It is Scorsese.
It is Scorsese?
It is.
So it's after hours.
It's after
It's the
hours.
one right
it's
after-
a little bit him, I think, being like, I need to make a hit. It's a sequel.
Oh, Color of Money.
There you go.
It's in the way that you use it.
I like that movie.
I'll tell you what he said to me about that movie. I didn't realize you could make money making pictures.
Sure, that's the first one.
Yeah, he was like, someone came up to me. They said, Marty, you can get paid for doing this.
The third one is number 3 is a comedy that I feel like is just now seen as sort of like an ultimate example of Hollywood offensiveness.
It's bad. It's not Soul Man.
It is Soul Man.
It is Soul Man.
I mean, like I don't know what anyone else would say about that movie.
Yeah, it's the one that people can't believe actually exists.
Right.
I mean, they were
in the 80s.
Yeah.
Mid-80s.
I mean, they were doing it to, I don't know.
Right, there's a little bit of like, well, no,
there's
we're
a little
commenting, but
self-awareness
at this
about
point,
it, but yeah.
Number 4 is much like The Color of Money, a major director being like, I just got to make something crowd pleasing.
Is it Coppola?
It is.
Oh,
Is it Peggy Sue Got Married?
Yeah,
Peggy Sue Got Married, which has a young
Nick Cage.
Nick Cage.
Yeah.
And-
from Amos and Andrew.
And Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
Oh, right.
Nick Cage is so fucking good in that movie.
He is. He's incredible in that movie. Number 5. This is the one I did not know. It's like a drama, like an adventure movie made in China, filmed in China, starring white guys, some kind of period adventure movie. I've never heard of this movie. It's based on a book.
I've never heard of it.
It's a De Laurentiis production. It was like incredibly controversial at the time. I think it's fairly racist. I think the Chinese government completely objected to
King Kong?
It's
Matched most of the clues he just gave.
fair enough.
Who's the
Brian Brown is the star.
Jesus Christ. I think I
Cocktail.
know what movie you're talking about. Now I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Scott, do you know this movie?
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow. Geez, tell me the title.
Taipan.
Was not going to guess. I was
Okay.
thinking of a different
I was
movie.
just looking. I was just like, "There's no way these guys know what this
Yep,
is."
no,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Never
Okay.
heard.
No.
But it was popular that year?
No, it was a bomb. This is its first week, and it didn't
this
do
is
too
what
well.
came out the week.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, it's number 5. Everything else,
So it made more money than Something Wild.
It
That's pretty
did.
crazy.
And I've never
opened-
heard of it.
And Jumpin' Jack Flash is number 6.
Hey.
Whoopee.
Whoopee.
Yeah. But thank you for coming in and talking.
Yeah,
about this
thanks.
movie.
Seriously. I really love this movie. I've loved it now for almost 20 or 35 years.
Yeah. Yes, 35. The
So-
35th year anniversary will be in
a couple years.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I enjoyed watching it again. Enjoyed examining what makes it work. And thank you for having me on.
What?
Come back
What
anytime.
a pleasure. What a privilege. We've talked a lot about how much unconsciously
how
we
much your
started
shows have
out
meant to
ripping
us.
off
Yeah.
everything from you.
Oh, good.
Because you were kind
yeah.
of like the Urtext in terms of funny podcasting, I think, for both David and I. And almost everything that's good about the show is some distillation of something we ripped off from you. And almost
Well, I
everything
ripped
bad
it
about
off
the show.
from Letterman as well. So.
Well, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're all just ripping off Jack Parr, right?
Yeah, we're
That's
all just
how it is.
ripping
By
off
proxy.
Adam or Steve.
And watch the Between Two Ferns movie on Netflix.
Yeah, if you want to see a movie where obviously
cuts
I
across
don't know
the
what I'm
line.
doing,
Right.
go ahead and watch it.
And Comedy Bang Bang, and I don't know, anything else you'd want to plug?
That's it.
You're touring right now, but I guess
It'll be over.
That'll be over with.
Yeah, although I may do some next year, but
Cool.
I'm not sure.
There's
And Freedom. I love Freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom
Thanks.
should, that's the best.
It's out on Thursdays probably now while you're listening to it for free.
Right.
there is a scene in Between Two Ferns, the movie, that I find so funny that I find the scene itself funny, but the thing I find funniest is knowing how much time and energy and money you must have put into it.
Which one?
It's the end effect of the McConaughey.
Oh, yeah. A lot of time
Right,
and money.
right.
Yes.
Where I think what's actually happening on screen is funny,
Right.
but thinking about the logistics of planning that.
We built a fake set that we shot most of the public access
Yeah.
stuff in. That is the fake set. We built a
Sure.
second hallway
Yes,
for that stuff.
It's incredible.
on an angle.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
So it's so we rebuilt that set on an angle so that the tidal wave could look better and they could flow down that hallway.
It's nuts.
Easier. Yeah.
When he floats by the window.
Yes, that's another part that I have a video. I want to put it out with Ryan Gall, who plays Cam in it. I've talked about it on his episode of Comedy Bang Bang, where we talked about the movie, about how he could not stay underwater longer than 5 seconds. So there's a shot of him floating dead underwater, and we have used as much of it as we can. But I have a video of the everything where he gets pulled down by the divers, and then like opens his mouth and then immediately like swims up to the surface.
It's incredible.
But yeah, a lot. I mean, it's pretty crazy what I was allowed to do on this movie. And
That was
and
my
where
thought.
all the money went.
I cannot believe they allowed him
Wonderful.
to
Yeah.
do this. It's a blank check.
A little bit.
Sort of. It was.
Yeah.
I'm not receiving another one. But
Come on.
Well, thank you all for listening.
Yep.
Please remember, rate, review, subscribe. Thanks to Ange Ferguda for our social media, Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork, Lee Montgomery for our theme song. Go to TeePublic for some real nerdy shirts. Next week we have, remind me of the chronology here.
Star Wars Episode 9.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I mean, Christmas. Next week's Christmas.
Next week's Christmas and
Rise
a
of
merry one to
Skywalker.
all of you.
gotta talk about it.
Skywalker will rise.
So
nice.
get ready for that.
Yeah, and then get ready for 2020 as we continue to talk about Jonathan Demme for several more months.
Sounds of the Lambs. Good movies coming up.
Good movies, good episodes in the bank.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. And as always,
You guys don't have a sign off?
He makes up one every time.
I'm trying to think
He
it's
has
the
to think of
opposite of what
something.
you do, except you crowdsource it, which makes it easier. And as always, what's up, hot dog?
That's right. That's good.
I was trying to find the longer version when he starts talking about that rebellious act of
When he's in the
financial
car.
maneuvership
Yeah.
he did.
What is it? Come on. Rather be a live dog than a dead podcast. I don't know.
That was the other one I was
Yeah,
thinking of.
right.
Yeah.
I don't even know the first one that you said.
It's when he's in the car and she's like been pegging him as a rebel and he owns
She
up
was
to
pegging
it.
him?
She's pegging him. It's after that long, like 45-minute pegging scene.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm forgetting the term he uses, but he's like, everyone told me not to sell this thing, and I went out and I sold it.
Oh yeah. Right. It's some stalker.
I was trying
bond,
to find
right,
that longer
right.
version. I think
Unis.
that's such unis.
Unis. There you go.
Municipal bonds.
Right. And he says it so casually, like she knows what he's talking about.